Hey, what's up, everybody? Derek Lambert here, MythVision podcast. Buckle up. I have a good close friend of mine, DJ, who's going to be joining us, telling about his story from his background, his childhood up to where he is today. I titled this, He Fought to Keep His Faith. His mind wouldn't let him. And we're going to go into some details, I imagine. Without further ado, let me introduce our guest. DJ, what's up, bro?
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. For those who don't know, he has a YouTube channel. I pinned it in the live stream chat. Be sure to subscribe to DJ. But also, DJ has worked on material with MythVision before. He is quite an intelligent person and has noticed a lot of things I haven't. And so we've done a video together. If you're curious about that, I need to add these in the description when we're done. Inventing Judas, how Judas debunks gospel historicity. And he wrote the whole script for this. Now, we tweaked it a little bit at the end together, but he wrote the whole premise. Everything in it is his ideas, his work. And this whole video here is a must-watch for anyone who's questioning the historicity of Judas, the one who betrayed Jesus, as a literary invention. And so, DJ, welcome. Sorry I didn't give you really much time to, chat there. I just wanted to give you a plug.
Nah, that's great. Yeah, very excited to be part of that video. Happy to have more people discover it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we worked hard to get that thing done, and we are working on another one. So maybe we'll save that for the end if we could remember to get to it. I do these little call-in type share your story shows as a little break from some of the more PhD lecture style Q&A. Let's decipher, all of that interesting stuff we do here at MythVision. However, there's something that gets personal when you get to hear a human being describe their own experience and how they journey through it. The way I like to look at it is I've picked up in my life testimonies. When you're in church, you hear a testimony, they're powerful, right? It's often exaggerated, but nonetheless powerful, okay? When you go to recovery meetings, you hear testimonies. They help empower people's lives. Well, guess what? They don't have a monopoly on giving their own testimony, okay? And people's experiences. So we do that here, and we like to hear people's takes on how they went from harmful maybe, or even sometimes not harmful. Sometimes it's just the ideas that we unravel and no longer believe. We kind of shed the old skin, so to speak. So if you don't mind taking us back to childhood and tell us your social security number and your debit card number. Oh, sorry, not that stuff. Take us to your childhood, mother, father, family. What kind of religious upbringing did you have? And were you one of those real Christians, or were you a fake Christian? I'm kidding. Tell us, what's up, DJ? Let's hear it.
Yeah, so my mom was raised Methodist. My dad was from an Irish Catholic family, quickly became an ex-Catholic by the time he was 18, fought with his strict Catholic father all the time and stuff. When they came together, they were like a born-again Protestant couple of a nebulous denomination. We would go to different kind of Protestant traditional churches growing up. I remember Episcopal Church was like the earliest one we went to in New Jersey. Happened to be, in hindsight, in the diocese of one Bishop John Shelby Spong, by the way. But I don't, not that I met him or anything. I was only like 4 years old. But anyway, so yeah, we were going to those kind of churches, and my experience growing up, Christianity, my faith was something we did on the weekend. It was Sunday, thinking about God on Sunday. It wasn't that my parents ever said hey, this is just a weekend thing, but that was the implicit impression that I got, that we thought about God, we talked about God, and something. We would pray. My mom read us Bible stories, Jesus Bible stories and stuff like that, but it's kind of on the side, And I remember this one story when I was a kid. I just remember being sent to my room by my mom for fighting with my sisters. And she sent me there, supposedly to think about what I did wrong. But what I actually thought about was how unfair it was that she sent me to my room. And I was just so upset. I was, 6 years old or 5 years old. And I'd be wailing into my pillow and pounding it. And man, she'll be sorry when I run away and stuff like this, And then I would exhaust myself in grief. And then I'd be oh yeah, God for some reason. I would think of God, and I remember that God exists, supposedly, right? And that's kind of emblematic of my experience growing up. Is like God was this thing on the side, and I often forgot about him. All my friends were secular, went to public school,
Mm-hmm.
side, and I think that worked while I was in a nice family with parents that were married and was happy. It worked for that time of my life, but that would change pretty rapidly pretty soon.
Mm. What happened then? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
So parents got divorced about 7 years old.
And I want to say, just to say this, because you just went over that like it was nothing. For me, that I can imagine that being traumatizing, because I felt like, I had a different experience. I had a father who was alcoholic, right? He struggled with addiction, the disease of addiction. And my mom wanted to keep the family together. She tried her best to try and get dad to grow up, calm down, right? Stop drinking. And I felt as a child like it was somewhat like I also had to participate to try and keep it together. So there was a sense in which we feel torn. Some of us kids have different experiences, but I don't know about you. But anyway, I don't know how you felt about that. But you just mentioned that had to be rough,
Yeah, and I kind of mentioned it in passing because of the fact that it wasn't the only thing that was kind of hard about it. Like it was definitely very hard. I don't think I did too well with it at all, and it was a struggle. But also, my mom divorced my dad. Mm-hmm. He kind of starts fading out of the picture. Then in a few years, she gets remarried. My stepdad, functionally present, kind of emotionally absent, disconnected. He had his own stuff kind of going on. So not really much of a father figure, I would say. And then when they get married, we move across 30 minutes away, and I have to leave all my friends behind. And I'm like a shy, introverted kid. So like all this stuff together, I'm just like lost, man. I'm just like shell-shocked survival mode. And so I think that really sets up me to be looking for something in a big way. And about the time I'm in middle school, I start doing like Lutheran confirmation. That's the kind of church we're going to at the time. And I'm the only kid in there that seems to want to be there. It's all boys. It's like gendered kind of thing. It's all boys in there. Everyone else is gazing at their shoes. They're there because their parents are making them there, and they want you to know that they don't want to be there.
Right.
They're not like participating in the conversation. And I'm asking questions. I'm like just interested in the Bible and Jesus and stuff. I'm asking questions. And they would joke. I remember one thing, like the one thing that they got a kick out of, the other boys there, was they made a joke. They're like, they knew I like video games. They're like, oh, you should make Bible video games when you grow up, and they'll laugh. And that was kind of like the only thing that they kind of like got out of some of those meetings was kind of like jokes like that or something. So I felt like I was starting to look towards Christianity, but I didn't have belonging. I didn't have like connection with other people that were like into it my age,
Right.
But then that changed in a big way because we got invited to a different kind of church by our neighbors. And if you're ready to go on,
it's your story. Okay. You might as well just feel like I will interrupt. I'll put it that way. And I don't mean to do it rudely. I might chime in. Usually people just freely, smoothly will say their story. And then if there's someone who's slow or hesitant and they don't, and I'll go, and I try to get it out of them. But I know I don't have to do that with you. I just want you to know. Go ahead and share whatever and go with the flow. Cool. And I'll chime in. I'm like, oh, whoa, what?
Yeah, totally. Sounds good. Yeah. So we get invited to a non-denominational church. Totally different. We go from the hymnals, and the boring liturgy and stuff. I never like liturgy. I know there's some people that even are not even religious anymore that still like liturgy. Bores me to tears. Go to a wedding at a Catholic church. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get out of the service, bro. It's like put me to sleep. But anyway, we go to a non-denominational church. It's totally different. We got modern music. There's a band, and there's even the day we go, there's young people my age playing a song during the service. They called it special music, and they were covering a band that was like a Christian indie rock band from Tooth and Nail Records, which would become a favorite for me growing up, source of like Christian indie rock. They were playing a song by this band Plank Eye. And like, I was like, this is amazing. This is like Christian music. That's like the music I listened to on the radio because I liked all the rock, you know, like Green Day and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is like Christian grunge or something, almost like 90s Christian rock. And I was like blown away. I was totally sucked in by it. And I ended up talking to one of the guys after service who was playing in the band. He becomes like really close friend still to this day. He's one of the people who's in my wedding and all this kind of stuff, but totally changed. So like now I'm going to a youth group there. I'm meeting all these other Christians my age and they want to be there. It's the opposite of before. Like all the kids want to be there. If there's an oddball out, I was the oddball out because I wanted to be there before. Now the oddball out is the person that doesn't want to be there. It's totally the opposite situation. And I go from like wearing band t-shirts in school. Now I'm wearing the Jesus t-shirts. I'm like becoming very much an evangelical, like publicly Christian, like type of thing. I remember some kid walked up to me in my public high school. I was wearing a Jesus t-shirt and they're like, why don't you keep that private? You know? And it was like very much in hindsight, I'm like, that's how I felt about Christianity when I was going to the traditional churches. I was like, yeah, it's a Sunday thing, you know, like it's not. And now I'm like 24/7 Jesus, like Jesus all the time. It's not just a weekend thing anymore. And yeah, I started witnessing to people. I witnessed to some people at my job as a bag boy at the grocery store of like talking to some people like about Jesus sometimes, you know, not all the time.
You're a teenager then, right? You're a teenager on this?
Yeah, I was like 14, 15 years old.
Okay.
Or, yeah, 15 or 16. It's like, yeah, it's about that. Yeah. So yeah, I'm shy. Like, it's funny because like, there was a lot of pressure to share your faith in the type of church I started to go to. Non-denominational was like, you guys save your friends from hell and stuff, you know what I mean? So there's pressure, but like I was a shy kid. Like, so like for me, in the back of my mind, I'm often like, how can I make this conversation about Jesus, you know? And I follow this pressure too. But for the most part, I didn't do it all the time. I just like felt really uncomfortable. Like I was in this internal struggle all the time, but like, but it would still come out times that I was comfortable doing it, and I would, you know, witness and stuff like that. So I wrote a book report freshman year in high school about the first Left Behind book, right? From my English teacher.
So you were convinced that it was true, right? At the time?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have any other understanding of Revelation to go on.
Same.
So yeah. Bro. So yeah, we went to this retreat and we watched some like Left Behind style evangelical like end of the world video. It was like had the song like DC Talk, I wish you'd all been ready, you know, so like talking about the raptures. Anyway, yeah, it was like totally into that. And I wrote this book and my English teacher asked me to stay after class and she's like, I read your book report and I went and read the book and now I'm like thinking about quitting my job to like stay home and raise my kids to make sure that they go the right way and stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm like, my mind's like, I'm like, oh, I can have like this kind of an effect on somebody. I was like, it made me addicted to the rest of my life to the idea of wanting to positively impact somebody, which is how I felt about it at the time. Now I'm looking back, I'm like, that's not how I would try to do it. But like still in the moment, I'm like, oh, I can like make this big difference to somebody like this.
Wow. I mean, I can't imagine as a kid, like a young kid having the adult teacher, you know, come to you and go, you've made me want to quit. Like, whoa, that's pretty shocking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a rare thing I didn't have like experiences like that all the time, but like it definitely like stuck with me. But another thing that like really got me into the whole scene of Christianity taking over my identity was like the music, man. I would start going, there were people at my church that helped put on local Christian like concerts and stuff. And so we started going to lots of shows, man. Like we go to different live Christian shows at local venues, at churches, started going to Christian music festivals. I've been to like Creation Festival in Agape Farms, Pennsylvania, like 6 times. Went to Cornerstone in Illinois, which was like the coolest because it was all like the alternative, the punk, the like heavy rock, industrial rock, all this stuff, Christian stuff like that was, you know, was like focused on there. And yeah, I just got really into the stuff. Had fun.
They really did try their best to imitate secular music so
Oh, yeah.
much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They did a good job. Yeah.
If you like Green Day, you can listen to MXPX, or if
Right.
you like, they have an equivalent. Yeah, but I was into it. Yeah, and I liked it. The mosh pit, like, I had an experience with mosh pits where it was like, it was fun because like there was this Christian brotherly love, and like you fall down and people were like, "Oh, we're gonna help you up." It's all this, but it was like a mosh pit. It was, and like for me, it was like my introduction to the energy of live music, which ultimately I discovered like, okay, this isn't just like Christian music. Like I can have this experience with other types of live music too. There's just something almost like so social, tribalistic, like the energy of that with other people compared to by yourself. It's it's different.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I got in all the band. I started wearing. I went from like the Jesus T-shirts to like the Christian band T-shirts. By the time I was like a junior and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
POD, Blindside, Project 86, No Innocent Victim. These are like shirts I was wearing, and all this stuff. Yeah, I was into a bunch of stuff like that, and I got into a Christian band at my church youth group. Like we started a band, and we started playing shows. We played at churches. I got prayed on speaking in tongues before, and I wasn't even into that kind of thing, but that's the kind of church we played at one time, kind of thing. And we played at local Christian venues, opened up for a couple of sign bands. It was kind of fun. We opened up for like Living Sacrifice and Goaty Hook at a couple places, small Christian venues. Like they'd have these like acts come around. And then we played a couple of juvenile detention centers and like our youth group event or something like that. Just like a dozen shows or whatever. So I got facial piercings. And so like, this is just like my whole identity was like very wrapped up in Christianity and the Christian like music scene.
Got it.
But then I met a girl in like more of the secular punk scene in school. And that's where things take a turn. In a different direction.
Okay. I can relate. I had my Jesus phase, and then I'd do the party thing a little bit, meet a girl, and then that happens, and life happens. Oh, I got to come back to Jesus to get my life right, but I'm still dating and stuff. So okay, what happens now, DJ? You're meeting a secular girl,
right?
What's up?
Yeah, and so I want to set this up a little bit. The meeting the secular girl was the final straw that broke the camel's back. But there were some other, early cracks in the foundation, that kind of were already there as well. Like, I remember when we played one show for like a youth group, some girl with a Christian blog wanted to interview me about my testimony as a Christian. Mm-hmm. And I was very insecure about it because I did not remember my conversion experience because I was raised Christian. Like, my mom told me that I had invited Jesus into my heart when I was 6 years old at a private school. I only went to a private school 1 year in kindergarten. And I couldn't remember it. And I barely remember anything about my life at that age. I couldn't remember the before and the after of like, this was without Jesus. And then, oh, boom, Jesus changed my life. And I really was envious of people that had that experience, would have the confidence of like, this is how Jesus changed my life when I got the Spirit and all this stuff. I didn't have that. There's no before and after picture to give me this confidence that I really know that God's made this difference in my life, right? So I'm loving being a Christian. I'm connecting to so much, and it means a lot to me. But there's kind of some insecurity about my testimony, my confidence about, do I really know? Did it really?
Yeah.
Is God really doing this stuff in my life?
There's honesty in that, though. The fact that you're saying that, there's honesty in that. And I think that's important for someone who's listening in, because you don't always have to be the most profound conversion experience. I was so devout in every single way or else, because all it is, what? You do all that to prove what to who? The people who are just going to say you were never one of them anyway to begin with? Like, who cares? At the end of the day, they would say that to anyone, the most extreme person. Someone could have said, I cut my arms off for Jesus because I believed in him so much. And they'd not have arms. And they'd be the most real world experience watching someone do that. You can't imagine they can't believe any more extreme than that. You don't believe as hard as they do. But the simple fact that you've held on to your still belief and they don't have arms, you can then just judge that, oh, you were never really one of us. It's like, he doesn't have arms. He literally told me, like, you haven't done anything like that. You know what I mean? Anyway, I'm just making an analogy.
I'm going out. I'm telling people about Jesus. Yeah.
You're doing enough. You're doing enough to show that you were a believer. You were convinced. Right. You may not have had the most extreme, profound conversion narrative that some others did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I feel like it's probably really common. I mean, it's obviously a goal for a lot of Christian parents to raise Christian kids, but they're not necessarily going to remember when they like became Christian. I mean, it's just kind of nature of the beast for some people, I think. And then there was evolution, right? Evolution came up in school after I, biology class or whatever. And I went to my youth pastor at this non-denominational church, who would become a close mentor to me. The church became those father figures I didn't have, because my dad kind of was MIA, and then my stepdad was like functionally present. This older kid that was also in the Christian band I was in, and it was playing that song the first day I went there, and like the youth pastor, they became like male role models in my life. It was significant, and I'm thankful for it. So I'm still thankful for that. And I still have good feelings about a lot of the people that I knew.
Yeah. What about evolution, real quick? What kind of impact did that have on you? Because I'm only sharing my experience that I believe it was 10th grade, 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere in that area. I remember he was trying to tell us, and he was very vocal. This was a public school teacher who was vocal about no religion needed. He wasn't a believer, and he made it clear, but he was saying, you believe what you want, but evolution is a scientific. And I remember watching all those, young earth creationist apologetic stuff from the Christian bookstore, all of that kind of stuff. And I remember purposely writing on like multiple choice, A, B, C, or D, writing on the side, none of the above, it's God. And he flunked me. Then the next year I had to take biology, because if I flunk it, you have to pass biology. So the next year I got a different teacher who worked with me, and I would have engagements in class, debate, the whole nine, at a public school. Years later, me and that biology teacher buddied up. I was a Christian. We were friends, but he was trying to educate me still, and I was still delusional. Now on Facebook, he watches my YouTube channel, and he's like,
really?
He's like, dude, you have gone so far, and you are doing amazing. He's so proud of me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
He lost his daughter to a disease. He begged God to heal her. It was a bacteria that ate her from her nose, ate her face away, and to her brain, and she died. And he begged God and said, you do this, I'll know you're real, number one, but like for the rest of my life. So anyway, I went off a tangent there, but evolution, you just passed it. I didn't know if that made a major impact for you or not.
The big impact for me was that it introduced me to Christian apologetics.
Got it.
I still have the Joshua McDowell book over here. Grab it. I still have this book over here.
Everybody hit the like button. Right. It'll help get YouTube.
This is the book my youth pastor gave me this for Christmas. I got a note in here. He wrote 1997.
Wow.
Gave me that for Christmas. And it's a young earth creationist Christian apologetics book. Which is, I was basically taught to be a biblical literalist like that. So I was. I don't know how I passed the class. I skirted through a lot of high school just with passing grades, like barely, man. Like I didn't get serious till college.
Same here. Once I got out, I cared. I didn't care about what you were telling me. Once I got out, I started learning more. So yeah.
Yeah. So I got into Christian apologetics, and okay. So that's brings me. Okay. So now but there's, you start to ask those questions whenever those things would come up that made me doubt. I feel shook. It made me feel like uncomfortable. You know what I mean? I understand why people. Pardon me. I understand why people. Yeah, sorry, there's a little alarm. Why people will get mad when you're talking to them or question their religion, because like it's just so cordy. You know what I mean? Like I felt that when things would like make me doubt, like the way it would like make me feel really shook, because my whole meaning, my whole sense of like meaning and purpose and everything, like my sense of security in life was so wrapped up in it. Like when it made me doubt, like it was like I feel the earth move under my feet, like that song, you know, like that's how it felt. So anyway, yeah, I got into Christian apologetics because, yeah. Anyway, that'll come.
I understand that. Yeah,
later.
I understand.
Yeah. So then I meet this girl, and we start. I meet her in chemistry class, speaking of science. And we have this teacher. He's so boring. It's a periodic table of elements, and like he's drones like so dry. You know what I mean? And like we start exchanging like CDs and stuff. Like I give her like No Innocent Victim, you know, like the speed metal Christian band. She gives me like Hatebreed. It's the same thing, but it's like the secular version. Or like exchanging CDs and stuff, and just talking about music and stuff like that. And quasi-romantic interest may be there, like under the surface kind of thing. And then I am failing chemistry, and they're trying to get me to graduate. So I'm senior, trying to get me to graduate. So they move me to botany for the people that are having some problems over there to help get me out the door. So when I'm leaving, she's like, who am I gonna trade CDs with? You know, and I'm like, oh, give me your phone number. That was like my moment to go, you know, to get the phone number. So then we start talking on the phone and stuff, and you know, we're talking late into the night and whatever, falling asleep on the phone or whatever. And yeah, I'm interested in her, but I'm also like conflicted because she's not serious, like kind of Christian type of like that or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so me and another guy in my Christian band are both interested in girls that he's actually dating this girl who's they're not Christian. His girlfriend was Jewish. And we called it missionary to dating. That's what they call it. That was the joke, was we were missionary dating. Oh. So I think over time, it made me in the back of my head start to question, because I felt like I was holding myself back from fully trying to pursue a relationship with this girl, because I felt conflicted about it. And overall I was feeling like, am I like just not even letting myself fully live my life? You know? And so like, they made me like question, like, is this really true? Like, and all those reasons to doubt, like, was I sure that, you know, this stuff was really God and all this stuff, it all came together. And I didn't have any answers for the apologetics. At the time, I didn't know the reason to refute this or that argument. I just started to be skeptical in a like broad, like extreme kind of way. Like, I'm just like, how do we know anything? How do we know anything about history? How do we know the Bible is really true? Mm-hmm. And while in my mind, I was genuinely asking these questions, in hindsight, I think a lot of it was the conflict I felt because I was interested in this girl romantically, like straight up, you know,
like lust conflict. You're concerned about lust, like a sin.
Right. Like whatever it would mean for me to pursue like a romantic relationship, like things that I'm not supposed to do as a Christian. Right. And so there's this tension. And I think that drove me to ask questions. And I get to the point where I just decide, you know, I pick up some atheist book in Borders or something. And it's like kind of very skeptical about history. And I'm just like, yeah, how do we know anything at all? And I basically end up like getting to the point where I'm not believing, and I decided to walk away.
So how old are you?
19 years old.
You're 19 when this happens.
Yeah.
So okay, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the reason I went to kindergarten at a private school was because I was held back. Okay. I didn't pass kindergarten. I must have struggled with the alphabet or something. I don't know. But
no judgment. No judgment. It's I'm just curious.
I think it's funny. I actually think it's kind of funny. So I was 19 my senior year. I would have been like 18, you know, but I was 19.
Yeah. So this is interesting. You're 19 and the internal kind of world there's just some conflict happening between the beliefs you're told to believe and your natural inclination. And somehow you just felt you were capable of actually looking behind that door. I wonder if it was I'm wondering, what do you think it was? What do you think it was that allowed you to do something like that when you were already in the faith? Was it just not overly strict on you? Maybe I don't know. What would you say?
Well, it did not go well. which is the next part, right? But
Ah.
yeah, no, I was able to. Gosh, man, I think the power of teenage hormones. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like what to attribute it to other than that being a major part of it. But also, yeah, I had some other reasons for doubt, and I was kind of late. It wasn't until like my freshman year in high school that we started going to that non-denominational church, So that's when like that type of Christianity really started to sink its teeth into me.
So it wasn't in your formative years. It was later, and you also still loved secular music. So there was a sense in which you still were able to keep some of the world with you when you went into this evangelical style Christianity. And then add to it, I'm trying to piece it together and agree or disagree, then add to it this purity culture kind of mentality that they're kind of shoving down your throat. You hit a wall.
Yeah, and I also, even the non-denominational church I went to, like, was almost not that far from like the way I was raised, where like so much of my life was secular, and there was like a secular sacred like dichotomy, wasn't thinking about God most of the time. And so even in the non-denominational church I went to, like, we would look at other Christians that were like, God told me to do this, God told me that, but like we thought they were woo-woo. We were like, you're super spiritual. That's what we would say. We would say they're super spiritual. And it was a condescending like insult that we were like, they're too presumptive that they know what God's telling them and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And so we were more like, I don't know, like it was like the miracles ended, right? We didn't believe in speaking in tongues, all the gifts of the Spirit anymore and all this kind of stuff. I was in that. And it was, and I had all those years where like I wasn't attributing God to all these parts of my life. So I almost feel like that made, in some ways, the ways it had its teeth in me and the ways it didn't kind of defined it a little bit.
Right.
It made it a little bit easier to walk away.
Huh. So you walked away and had no interest in the Bible, Christianity, religion. You just walked away permanently and became a secular rock music listener, and that's all you did for the rest of your life, I suspect. Oh no. What happened?
So I'm sorry. So walking away was really hard, right? Like saying goodbye to people was really hard. Broke up the band, had to break to them that I'm not a Christian anymore. I had a Dairy Queen, and we're like, well, we were like explicitly about being in a ministry. So like that was over. Talked to my youth pastor, tell him, and he tried to convince me a little bit, and he was like, and then he like kind of like released me to the devil. He didn't say that, but it was like, maybe you need to do this. Maybe you need to walk away. Maybe that's what you need to do. And it was hard. It was uncomfortable, type of thing. And then like, there was somebody I was really close to. And one night we were watching a movie, and they asked me, because I must have made some comment. They're like, "You don't believe in Jesus anymore?" I'd say no, just be honest. And they cried in my lap, and it like, to me, like it was like heartbreaking, like it definitely like, it cut deep. It made me wish that I could change my mind. It made me wish I could turn around and like believe again, just to not put them through that pain. Because you can imagine, I mean, just like someone's believing that you're like lost, you're going to hell, someone that really cares about you. Like, it's like crazy that we have to put each other through this just to be able to, think or ask questions, change our minds about stuff. It's really sad. But anyway, it was hard.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah. So, and then all the stuff that I feared, those times when I had doubts and I felt shook, like when I had doubts and I was worried about what it would mean if it wasn't true, it all became my reality. Like, because I became nihilistic, my sense of like meaning and purpose and morality was so built around this idea of a God, like that had been so like ingrained in me, even in just a few short years, that like, I just felt like I was like, had no like orientation, had no center of gravity. Just, I felt like I was in this nihilistic, like, haze. And I tried to pursue things with that girl, and she had, by the time I got around to it, she had moved on. She was interested in somebody else. So I lost the faith center of gravity, and then the one reason I was leaving, that wasn't there either. So I was totally adrift. I'm like, well, I guess I'm just gonna like do the stuff I couldn't do before. So I ended up like calling some friends who party in ways that I wouldn't as a Christian, and I just kind of like got in a partying phase. It's like the summer after my graduating high school, and yeah, I did that, and I was just kind of like doing that all the time. We just hang out, and we would, get intoxicated kind of thing, and came to a point where like it was messing with my job. I was working at the time. I was working at a laser tag place actually, and I could tell I was getting distracted. Like maybe it was like, I don't know, it was a hangover or whatever, but like I was distracted at work, and I was like, okay, I gotta stop doing this partying thing because it's like messing with me even, when I'm not doing it.
Right.
So basically quit like cold turkey. And while I was in that partying phase, I started dating some other girl. And when I quit, suddenly I became more aware of how the dynamic between us really was, because we were just like in like another state of, bliss or whatever while we were dating. And like, she wasn't very, it wasn't good. It was kind of toxic.
Oh,
and
wow.
Suddenly I'm like, oh, I don't really like this person. Like, I was just kind of like, the relationship was born in like this, haze of, partying and stuff. And then I'm like, I don't like this person. I break up with her. And then it all kind of culminates in this one night, right? We go to a concert. I promised friends that I would drive because I had a minivan, third generation, my first car, minivan. So I'm always, it's good. You get to bring all the people to the theme park, wherever you want to do. So we take some friends. I promised them I'd take them. I got sick though, but I'm like going to go anyway because I promised I would take them. So we drive. We go to this winter concert. It's like Green Day, I think maybe Good Charlotte. There was definitely Disturbed there. Yeah, some bands like this. And the girl that I was interested in is one of the people there. And she's partying pretty hard that night. And there comes this one point when the friend she brought goes to the bathroom, and she comes up to me between the bands, and she's crying. And she says, we used to talk more, and when we talked, I didn't have to do this to myself. Like, I didn't have to do this. Because she was just like partying really hard, and she was kind of messed up,
Mm-hmm.
And she was upset about it. And she was like, when we used to talk, like, I didn't have to do this. But now you're just like every other guy. Yeah, she's like, we don't talk anymore, but now you're just like every other guy. And it just like punched me in the gut. Like the words coming from her, especially. And then her friend came back from the bathroom, was like, what's wrong? And she's like, nothing. And they went back into the crowd. And I'm just left like now with like this stone in my shoe. Like, I'm just like, I can't enjoy the concert anymore. So I'm like thinking about what she said to me, walking over to the smoking balcony, and I'm like finding a seat. And I'm just like, I want to be like that again. I want to be that kind of person again. And so I end up like taking this as like looking back on my whole experience and how life was better when I was a Christian compared to where it is here. And I take it as like experiential proof that Christianity must be true. So
how old are you now?
I'll go back to it. Still 19. That was only like, it was only like 6 months, like part of the year.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're still 19 today then, I guess. I'm kidding. Go ahead. Keep going.
That'd be nice. Yeah. So I come back and I'm like reconnecting. My youth pastor, I had followed him over to a different church even before I left. He became a middle school youth pastor somewhere else. I started volunteering with him. I started volunteering again. I'd walked away from that. Now I started volunteering again, coming back. I had like this come back to Jesus moment on like a worship service, Wednesday night worship service. I come back, I go to the front, I'm all emotional. He prays over me, And I'm like having this like sad like return to Jesus, like, you know, confession or whatever.
I
And
do know. If I
yeah,
may just tell you, one time I was
yeah.
in the partying phase. I'm not going to get into the details, but I was wearing a tank top, and it's like an American flag type tank top that I was rocking, and I was all, you know, muscled up and all, and I was hungover, and I'm in that church the next morning. There's like 1,000 people in this place, and they had some out of town like charismatic preacher on the stage, and he, you know, they do this thing where they're like, somebody's in here suffering today. I mean, this morning, somebody's going through like, and they're like doing this whole thing, and I'm sitting in there and I'm numb, you know, but the music's good, and I'm just sitting there like enjoying it, and then all of a sudden, like, I swear on everything this happened, bro. The guy turns and he's like, it's you. And I'm like, I'm sitting in the like stand, and I'm looking, and I'm like, it can't be me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's gotta be them. No, you're talking about them. No, you're talking about them. And next thing you know, I go up on stage, and I'm like, dude, they had to smell the alcohol. Okay. And I mean,
Right.
I am still drunk probably. Okay. And then there's all this prayer and all that stuff. Like, so I have these moments where I would come back and get saved again, or, you know, rededicate, recommit. So you're not alone in that. You're not alone in that.
Yeah. So many of those times I didn't go up, but that time I definitely did. And there were other times too. Yeah. Just make sure, man. I just, you know, how many times do I have to ask Jesus in my heart before I'm sure that, you know, I really did it. I was really the right age. And this time I really did it. Exactly. So, but I came back and I was like, what happened? Like, what happened before? Like, why did my faith like implode on itself? You know, I'm trying to figure this out. And I end up like spending all this time at a Christian bookstore. I'm just looking for answers, reading books, sitting in the aisle, you know, just devouring books. And I just decided to get a job there. So I started working at a Christian bookstore.
I did too.
Did you?
Yes.
I worked there for 5 years while part-time finishing college. And and so I start finding some answers. There's kind of a through line in like the stuff that I become convinced is the answer, like what went wrong, you know. And there's this whole like, there's some ideas in some books, like still got this John Piper's Desiring God. I got some John Eldredge's books as well. I got some Christian counseling books over here. John Towson and Henry Cloud. Anyway, there's the main through line that I've become convinced of is like that I was like a Pharisee Christian before. There's this idea C.S. Lewis like shares that Piper talks about of like a virtue of like self-denial as an end in itself. Like you're supposed to deny yourself, but like he's saying, no, you're supposed to deny like the thing that your desire is not really made for to get the real thing your desire is made for. And this kind of thing. And like God really wants you to bring your desires and live out your desires, but live them out in the way that he had originally intended desires to be before the fall and all this kind of thing. And so I become convinced that this is what happened. I was like trying to suppress my God-given desires instead of like trying to live them in the way he meant, you know, he intended. Now, I don't know if this really would have helped me before, but at this point in my journey, I've come convinced this is what happened. This is the problem. Right. And this is the answer. So, yeah. And so I just become like very radically into like authenticity as a Christian and like buy into these ideas, like very Pauline, like the maximal like freedom, like, and authenticity, like, oh, my desires like are actually God-given, and like I have to be authentic. Like all this putting on stuff is like cleaning the outside of the cup or like trying to do stuff. No. God, and like Wayne Jacobson's another influence for me. Like just like, oh yeah, love, God's love is going to complete everything in you that needs to happen. You don't have to try to do it. You just authentically live out the transformation that happens. So I become like super radically like authenticity, like as a through line. And I think it was the problem. And I'm really excited about my Christian faith again. I feel well adjusted in it, and I want to share it. I become interested in evangelism. And that is about to lead to a really ironic turn with where that goes.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat at this point. I'm thinking, okay, we're getting somewhere.
So I sit down and I'm trying to figure out, how do I share this understanding of Christianity with people? And I'm thinking about secular people. For whatever reason, I'm not thinking about people that are Jewish or Muslim or that already believe in God. No, I'm thinking about the secular people, because that's my impression of the people I grew up with, So I'm thinking about them. How do I share this with them? And I start trying to like map out how God is like inviting us in Christianity to start live the life we were made for, And so like people have these God-given desires, and I have to show them how Christianity is the real way to like get what you really want. That's going to make you happy. And so I'm like, well, how do I meet these people where they're at? Like, how are they trying to meet these desires right now? And I'm like imagining like, oh, it's maybe they don't pray, but they like reflect, or they journal, and I start thinking down these things, and I think about morality and meaning, especially, and purpose. When I think about those, it's a big surprise for me, because these Christian books I've been reading have been kind of like convincing me of things that are more like genuinely from the ground up, like not just like doing because God says so, whether I feel like it or not. Like, no, like genuinely kind of like because I want to, and because it's actually more fulfilling for me to do this. And now, as I'm imagining a secular life, I'm imagining, oh, they could still have these reasons to want to be a good person. Oh, they could still have this sense of, you know what I mean? So the sense of meaning. And so I'm shocked and surprised that as I'm imagining this with an evangelistic intent, oh yeah, I could have a really meaningful life as a secular person. If I stop believing again, if I ever do, I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to be like a nihilist again. And it's like a profound like realization for me that I do not expect.
Yeah.
So this this really sets up me totally changing how I question things, or what I do when I have doubts again later, because I used to always think that people that saw things differently must be trying to reject God, run from the light, suppress the truth, because they want to sin stuff. And now I'm like, I just accidentally started to see things more like somebody who's not a Christian, with the intention of being evangelistic as a Christian. I did have, and my no intention of wanting to sin, and I'm starting to see things a different way. So it totally shifts my thinking about like, basically it not only took away my fear that like I would lose meaning and purpose in this life if I stopped believing, but then also God's not going to send someone to hell for just thinking differently out of good intentions, for just using their mind to the best of their ability. And so I have this shift in my thinking where suddenly I'm not afraid of going to hell anymore, because I'm just like, God's not going to send someone to hell for using their brain the best that they can. And now that's a possibility that's real to me, because I've experienced it firsthand.
So
in this kind of way.
This is important. So somewhere along the journey, from you going to the Christian bookstore, doing apologetics, not the typical really low-hanging fruit style apologetics, you're seemingly trying to advance. You're going to something that seems a little bit better, but now you're trying to evangelize, if you will, the secular crowd. They didn't seem to be sharing the same nihilistic, in all aspects, no meaning kind of view that you had in your own experience. So you're projecting your own experience onto every secular human that you think is out there, that they must be going through the same shit I'm going through. I got to save these people. Like, isn't it always about us? And so anyway, you go out there, you start, I suspect, having these conversations, but you're still now starting to doubt.
I should have clarified. This is all in my head, right? Like, I haven't actually started trying to evangelize. I'm trying to get ready to.
Okay.
And I'm like, just trying to imagine, how am I going to meet these people where they're at? And I started imagining it differently, and it's just a totally internal shift.
So you're introvert on steroids, and everything we just listened to was all in your head. So so you're but even then, part of that was in your head was this doubt You're saying you're starting to have like different thoughts in your head going, is it okay that I think this way? God wouldn't like burn me for all eternity because I have a different belief or think differently, right? If my intentions are good. So you're like doing philosophy with yourself in your own mind based on your theology.
Yeah.
I go, this is 101 introvert right here.
Oh, totally. I easily always could have imagined, you know, and I regret this looking back on my school experience, like that in my mind, that on some level I was thinking this about other kids in my school. They're like, oh, they must be rejecting the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I get
it. Yeah. It's sad the way, like, I feel like it's dehumanizing.
I did that too.
Yeah. I regret it. You know, if I go back, I would actually relate to those people differently.
Yeah, of course.
But to make the even worse is that for me to get to a place where like I believed that people could like think differently for not sinful reasons, I had to do it myself. I had to do it myself to be like, oh, this is possible. It wasn't because I talked to somebody about it enough to be like, you know what I mean? To humanize somebody like that. I had to literally accidentally do it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then at that point, I'm like, well, I don't think God's going to send me to hell because I accidentally started thinking about something differently when I was trying to do his will. I mean, you know what I mean? So then it totally changes my relationship with doubts, right? So doubts come up again. Always before, I felt shook. I was like, oh, everything's on the line. But now I've accidentally got this plan B, this secular worldview that still has meaning and purpose here. And I don't feel shook anymore. When doubts come up, if I start reading the Old Testament again and there's some horrible stuff in there, now I'm like, whereas previously I'd be like, well, God knows what I don't know. He's got higher thoughts than our thoughts. Trust him with all your heart, lean on your understanding. Now it's like, I'm no longer willing to accept that kind of thought stopper, which I think I was really doing because of how much was psychologically on the line. You know, I feel like my faith had like my psychological well-being at the point of a gun. And so when dates came up, you know, when doubts come up or whatever, I'm like, I'm willing to accept this ransom of this thought stopping, I'm just going to have faith thing to get out of this hostage situation.
Yeah.
But now that I'm no longer a hostage to it, I can think, I know there's this plan B and I'm going to be okay. The gun, it has no power over me anymore. And now I'm like, this faith thought non-stopping thing is bullshit. I'm not going to do that. So now it's like, you know what I mean? So now I'm going to follow the logic and the reasoning to its conclusion, you know, trusting that I'm not going to go to hell for just using my mind to the best of my ability. And I do. And then like, you know, it's just a matter of time where all, you know, the rest just follows. I become like a liberal Christian after I read the Old Testament. I'm like, well, this part couldn't have been God. This must be a human part, right? Some of the stuff here, but Jesus was the real thing. Like he gave the clearer picture of the good God, you know? And then later on, within the 5 years of working at the Christian bookstore, I've become like a secular humanist, basically, even though I didn't know what it was called. I just kind of become one. And then I look up, I read, oh, this is a secular humanist. Oh, that's what I already am. Like I kind of become that. The last 6 months I'm at the Christian bookstore, I'm not a Christian.
So you're working there and how much did you study? Do you feel like, do you remember how much you came across that convinced you?
Convinced me of what? Of
not being a Christian.
So I read no non-Christian books during this period. No non-Christian books.
Okay.
I'd read that one back in my senior year in high school, but like this period is all Christian books. So then
I have to ask, why did you not believe? I mean, what made you just stop believing? There had to be like a process somehow, something, right?
Yeah. I think it's mostly kind of what I said. The way I would summarize it is I would say that when I stopped fearing what it would mean if I stopped being a Christian, it totally changed my ability to submit my Christian beliefs to critical thought. And then they would just change over, and they changed over time, just naturally from that.
So in a way, correct me if I'm wrong, giving yourself permission to not have to believe, to not, feel forced to do this thing that you're being told you must do alone caused you to feel comfortable enough to say, I'm not going to believe. You didn't even need counter evidence. You didn't even need really any deep dive in the opposite direction in order to see that this is just not, it doesn't hold up. For you to be willing to give yourself the liberty to say, hey, I don't believe this. And that's my choice. And so you were comfortable with that, with plan B on the line.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where you're at. Okay. So now you leave the Christian bookstore and you're done with Jesus forever. And you never want to talk about it ever again. You don't even do any research on it anymore. Right? I'm kidding. Please tell us what happens.
Yeah. So, I mean, even though I'm no longer seeing myself as a Christian, I'm totally, more introvert stuff, right? I'm totally like analyzing the whole thing and wanting to revisit, like, because I kind of find my way out without like thinking about apologetics and stuff like that. So I end up revisiting like every apologetic argument I ever heard, and thinking about it more and thinking, what do I really think about it? And, it's been 20 years. So I've remained interested in the conversation, and I've taken deep dives into, hardcore on skepticism, critical thought, hours of the atheist experience, call-in shows, all like MythVision starting to do, and just like really getting baptized in critical thinking, like hardcore. And, to the point where like I basically revisit every apologetic argument I ever heard, and I know the reason why, like, I don't think it's true. So definitely, like, processing all that was a big part of it.
How many years go by with that? Like, would you say, how old were you when you were leaving the bookstore, and then all that you just described? That's got to be years, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I still like that stuff. I still watch those things, type of call-in shows.
Of course, of course.
Sometimes, and I enjoy it. So it's been an ongoing kind of journey and process, and I've remained interested in it and kind of like supportive of it as like part of that community and stuff, like, that kind of thing.
How old were you though? How old were you?
Oh, when I stopped believing?
When you left the bookstore, when you left the Christian bookstore.
Yeah, I was like 26 and a half.
And that half, got that half in there. All right.
That's how specifically I'm analyzing.
You remember.
Yeah, and so it's almost been like 20. It's been about 20 years since.
Wow.
Since then. Yeah, I'm like 45 now.
You do not look 45, by the way. Just so.
Oh, thank you.
Compliments to you. No, seriously. You found the fountain of youth.
You want to know the secret?
Tell me the secret.
No kids. I don't have any kids.
I imagine that is probably a true statement. I had them young, so I'm almost to the phase where they're all adults. Yeah.
If I have them now, they're going to take me to retirement. You know what I mean?
For sure.
If I can afford it.
Yeah. So what has been your experience since leaving, and the research you've been doing, and what has it done? Just has it just, I don't know, made it more, you kind of hinted at it, made it more obvious, but now you're studying it, you're really diving deep into the critical aspects.
Yeah. Before I mentioned that, one other thing is, I got to tell you, like, the cognitive dissonance that I felt when I had those Christian doubts, when I doubted something I believed, man, it's been good not to have that. It's been 20 years, and I still question things that I believe, but like, I think when you have like bottom up, like, kind of values, and it's not dependent on something you believe about the objective world, your center of gravity is just not threatened by changing your mind, And I just feel like the truth has set me free from like the cognitive dissonance. It's just was an uncomfortable way to like feel when you're just trying to question something you believe, So for me, it's like looking back 20 years, like, I'm just thankful to not have been experiencing that anymore during that time. But so yeah, I got into MythVision kind of stuff not long after that. I wanted to understand historically what's the real story here, you know, because I presented to my high school Bible club at lunch Christian apologetic arguments for the resurrection, you know?
Yeah.
So like, I want to know what's the real story. And I ended up getting into stuff that's of the MythVision vein by reading some John Shelby Spong books in like Borders. A couple of them where he gets into a lot of like the intertextuality, typology, whatever you want to call it. He calls it midrash, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that kind of stuff. And it blew my mind. And it was amazing. I mean, having your mind blown like that about something you've seen a certain way your whole life. And suddenly it's like, whoa, this is what's going on. It's like, and it's also like, it's romantic to me, like digging into like ancient, it's like Indiana Jones, it's like National Treasure. It's like you're digging up like buried treasure, you know? And also it's like forbidden history. I mean, it's like it's very enticing and romantic. So I do like, you know, I've enjoyed digging into.
It's a hobby now.
Like
it's like it's not devotional for religious reasons anymore. And people are like, they think the only reason you would do this is because you hate it or you just want to make everyone think like you. And it's like, I've grown to actually enjoy this. And it's almost like, to me, the analogy I would give, I've given it before and you might relate, is that if we went to a magic show and it was high profile, like David Blaine or somebody, and we're like blown away. We think this is real. This guy's the cult leader. He's real, right? And then we go in and one day there's somebody rocking a hoodie and they're in the corner. Hey. And we're like, what's up? And they're like, do you want to know how it's really done? And I'm like,
right.
What do you mean? It's really, we see how it's really done. What are you talking about? And they're like, no. Do you want to know how it's really done? And then it's like, well, yeah, but I'm scared. I'm scared that you might take away my wonder, my interest, you might be like totally like ruining it and spoiling the fun. And then, you know, will it do that? And then he's like, nah, you're going to be even deeper in now. You're going to be even more interested. Now you're going to want to know the mechanics behind it. There's a whole nother world. You have no clue once you see how the trick is done. And there are other tricks out there and all this stuff. So that's the analogy I give. And you think if you saw David Blaine pull the stunt, you would just stop giving it interest, right? Oh, no more, now know it's a trick. You're not convinced anymore. Let everyone else just enjoy the show. But sorry, I'm the guy with a hoodie, okay? And I may not be whispering. I might be on an intercom. But either way, I feel like this has been interesting. It's been fascinating. And I don't know if you relate to me on that.
Absolutely. No, I the way I like to think about it some too is like this kind of thing would be disenchanting, like you're saying, for Christians, right? Like looking at this stuff, and I've tried hard to share this kind of stuff with Christian friends and try to make it palatable. And it's not. It's a non-starter generally. At least, the people I've talked to. But for them, it would be disenchanting. For me, it's enchanting. Now, from the perspective I have now, it is awe-inspiring. It is, wondrous. Like it's enchanting for me from the worldview that I have now, Yeah. The histories, the mysteries of history and stuff. Like it's very... Yeah, it's enchanting.
For me, it's also freeing. Like from that experience you had as a child or young man with the cognitive dissonance, the suffering, the trauma, the loss of meaning, and all that you had, like your whole foundation was taken out from underneath you. And you never want to feel that way again. Well, there's a sense in which you're also doing this to reassure and to understand, like, am I really... at least initially, like, am I on the right track? Did I make the right decisions? But then eventually it's almost like I know enough now to know that I can't go back to that, but you've fallen in love with it in a sense. And now you're like, okay, this is interesting just in and of itself. It fascinates me. I look at it too as like the claws it had in me that may have caused both positive and negative effects. I'm interested in evaluating this stuff because I'm kind of fascinated even just with how the mind works from a scientific angle to go, why do humans believe this at all? Why did I, as a poor kid, just like, how did I end up in this? How did I even come to think this was the case? I was a fish born in water, and just nature took its course. And how did I one day start going, hold on, I'm in water. Hold on, I'm an amphibian. Hold on, or I'm a fish, or I'm a, whatever creature I am. I'm now self-evaluating the existence I have and the thoughts I have about the belief system I have. Like that was not something I ever did. It's kind of nuts, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
It is. Yeah, you're reading as like a history. You're doing like a textbook, history textbook, right? The way you're taught to read it, and now it's like, wait, this is like totally different. This is not even the right mindset at all. It's totally something.
Well, think about it. Like, to me, it's like even factoring the science, right? If we were in the ancient world, we watch someone who just can't stop drinking. Okay, we watch them literally dissolve in front of us. Their whole life is in shambles. They die of alcohol poisoning in the ancient world. We think they're controlled by a demon. Why is this person not listening to the words coming out of our mouth? Stop doing this. Just quit. And we have no awareness of what's going on in their behavior, what's going on mentally, scientifically. We don't understand all that goes on to this psychologically, trauma that may have led this person to go down this path. And so I look at it like we didn't understand. We did not know. And I feel like we're just now blindly touching some of this stuff, even now with our advancements. Okay. And I feel like we have enough with the science we know now. We can look at this and understand and evaluate religions in a way that I think we can better understand why these experiences, why these things. And I'm actually interviewing a scholar next week, a neuroscientist named John Wathy. He goes by Jack. He has a book called The Phantom God. Did you ever watch those episodes?
No, I don't think so.
Where he unravels this idea of why we came to believe in God to begin with. And it's a neurological thing that goes back to when you're an infant in your mother's womb. You literally are wired by your mom. Mind you, without her, you have nothing. She is your deity, okay? You have to understand that we are little sponges, even in the womb, all right? As we grow up in the first formative years of our lives, 5 to 10 years, we're absorbing everything, but we're also highly dependent upon other agents that aren't us in order to even survive. And so that's why when you grow up beyond that and you're asking for this higher power, this being to care for you, to take care of you because mommy and daddy are no longer there, there's a psychological factor as to why we're wired to expect an agent out there, because when we're babies crying for milk, mommy could hear, they're wired also to hear that noise, to bring you the comfort, to give you the food, to nourish you as a baby. And so your whole existence is wired for the worldviews that have evolved naturally, we call religions, in order to make sense of the world and the perceptions we have about deities and everything. That natural perception for me is mind-blowing for me. And it goes even further. Yeah. Because he factors in the phantom limb as an experiment to point out how this works. We all know the experiment, or most of us. The arm, you put your real arm behind the curtain. They put a fake dummy arm in front. They take a feather and they pet both arms, the fake and the real, at the same time. Your brain connects to the fake arm. It's not even really tied to you. There's no actual connection between you and the plastic arm sitting in front of you. But because your brain is visually watching that arm while your real hand is mimicking that behavior, then they stop touching your real arm. And all they have to do is touch the fake one, and you feel the touch, but you're no longer being touched on your real arm. Wow. That's when they take the hammer and then they hit the hand and they're like, I didn't hit your real hand, but you felt the hammer hit you. Well, there's so much involved in this that I'm just sitting here like, I was just a fish in a bowl of water and didn't know that I was in water. I didn't know that I was in a bowl. I didn't know that, those are pebbles. I'm self-evaluating the world we live in through a natural world. And it blows me away how much we don't know and how much we start to learn more about it, that I wonder if we can discover the magic trick and kind of look behind it and see why humans believe, why we do this from a natural evolutionary standpoint. That's kind of like what fascinates me, Yeah,
I love like evolutionary psychology. It's really interesting to me. I don't know if there's ways to prove that or how that works, but a lot of it seems compelling to me, like things like the hyperactive agency detector type of idea. And it's something that is part of my ongoing journey too, that's made me look at some other things too. Like looking back at my journey, I'm like, I needed more than just to become an atheist, because that's what I did at 19, right? I was an atheist at 19. I just also happened to be a theist about human values at the same time as being an atheist. So the way I think, I'm like, I was a broken theist. You know, I was like, Nietzsche described when he was like, you can't just take the God out and leave the Christian value system in place. It'll like collapse in on itself. It's literally what I like experienced at 19. And then when I came back, I accidentally developed a more bottom-up humanistic like values, you know, between these Christian books and like imagining things from a secular perspective. Now I kind of like find myself replacing the values too. So it's like, and then I'm kind of ready for maybe the atheism part without like becoming a nihilist again.
Yeah.
But now the other thing I think about, other than like, for me, I think about my worldview as like truth, love, and imagination. So like truth is like the skepticism. I'm trying to understand objectively what's true. The love is like empathy, the humanistic, like human values, bottom up values, not top down authoritarian from God values. And then there's imagination. Like for me, imagination has been something I've always loved movies growing up, playing video games, making up stories, playing with my action figures till I was way too old, like 13 or whatever it was. And I love the human imagination. And like, I think about things like, I think the reason we need science is because evolutionarily, we're not like really good at objective truth. Like, I don't think we need science or philosophy or critical thinking to ground the human relationship with truth. I think we already get that in our instincts.
Right.
Human beings could not have survived long enough to invent philosophy if we didn't already have some relationship with the truth.
Right.
If you're being chased by a lion and you're like, yeah, that lion's there, but maybe it's also not there.
No.
Like the law of non-contradiction. Like
that guy's dead.
That guy is dead. That guy's dead.
Yeah.
So imagine a presuppositionalist, right? Shout out to the presuppositionalist who thinks, our relationship with truth begins with philosophy. Because from evolutionary perspective, it's already somewhat in our instincts, imperfectly, but still somewhat there. Now, if a precept like went back in time and is talking to some Neanderthals, like, I noticed you're using like this, using some utensils to like cook over the fire so you don't get burned. But how can you justify assuming that because you got burnt before, you're going to get burnt again the next time? Unless you assume that my God exists, who, by the way, hasn't been invented yet. Unless you assume my God exists, you cannot justify assuming. And these Neanderthals are like, and they throw him over a cliff and save the human race from extinction, possibly by doing so.
Like, you have to imagine these kind of thinkers, like there's a net, right? Like society wise, there's a net that protects people who have dumb ideas or that have ideas that just, don't work.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you too, and I know that his work is controversial. He's writing in a time where this was the norm. Have you read Sir James George Fraser's The Golden Bough? No?
No.
Obviously, I didn't expect you to have read the whole thing. It's 12 volumes, but like there is it's an abridged version, and even the abridged version is like 44 hours long in audio. It's ridiculously long. Wow. And I listened to it while I drove across the country from Washington State to Florida. And there is something about it that even today, anthropologists still, they don't agree. Like, mind you, it's like 120, 130 years ago. But he had this idea about the history of how things worked on Earth with humans. And that was, we went through a magic phase, then we went through a religious phase, then we got into the science phase, the scientific era. He thinks that this is the best era. We have ways to actually test and like make sure we're not making up stuff. So he, in the book that I read, and I heard that the raw actual 12 volumes has more problems in it in terms of there are ideas in there that come from the 1800s that aren't nice, calling people savages, things like that. But he points out that magical thinking was what reigned the day. There were two forms of it, sympathetic and homeopathic. And ultimately, I believe sympathetic is, if it looks alike, it is connected. Like if it looks similar, it's connected somehow. And then homeopathic is, if it comes in contact, it'll always be connected. So no matter how far you take it away, it's connected now that it's come in contact. So ancients believed in two forms of magic on a regular. And I'll give you an analogy that he gives in the book. And he gives, when I say hundreds, that's the truncated version. There's no telling. He might have given thousands. I don't know. He gives in it, and it's really exhaustive. It feels like it's so much material. You're like, what the hell do I do with all this? So in one case, he points out how some of the natives that were here, First Nation natives, and the stories that they tell is they would go fishing. What they would do is they would observe trees to see which tree was getting pecked by birds the most. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Pecked at, like not just landed on, but pecked at. Because they had a belief, and you'll see the connections here in just a second, how ancient humans thought about connecting things, pattern recognition. They saw trees that were pecked at by birds. They went and created fishing poles from that wood, believing that if birds were attracted to that wood and were pecking it, then the fish, which will be going after the bait that's connected to the pole, will peck at the bait. So the belief was, if birds will peck at this wood, then connected to the wood, we have our bait. The fish will want to be, they'll gravitate and they'll go for the bait, right? They're fishing for. Another analogy they give is like jaundice. A child is born with yellow jaundice in its eyes. So they believe yellow in the eyes can be extracted by finding yellow leaves, yellow hair, yellow, you name it, and they can create like a potion. The shaman would craft a potion from yellow to help get the yellow out of the eyes. Okay. Wow. He called magic a false science. Okay. He thanked our ancestors, though. He said, I'm thankful for the ancestors who had a false science, because it is the building blocks to what eventually becomes a real science. Then he actually spends quite a bit of time being critical about religion, because in the magic phase, when deities do get introduced, spirits, magic can control them. Magic can control gods. Gods cannot get around magic early on. Eventually, gods get so above and beyond that humans can't use magic to control gods. And it's such an interesting kind of anthropological journey. Then eventually we get to the science phase. And now he almost had this like linear view that all cultures should go down the same path. And some cultures are still in the magic phase. If you just go to certain cultures in the world, they're still in the magic phase today. They're not in even the religion phase. They're not even in the science phase. So, it's not common that you'd find that. But anyway, I didn't know if you've ever seen that, but I figured I'd take the time to kind of give a little bit of a layout.
No, I haven't, but it reminds me of something I just heard, which was kind of the idea that the belief in a single God could have set up science, because if one God made everything work in an integrated way, then like science and studying how things work together makes sense, versus like if there's multiple gods that are doing all kinds of random stuff that's chaotic all over the place, then maybe it wouldn't have, I don't know. Maybe that's true.
Even the proto-magic has that built in. I mean, in a sense, they're pattern recognition. Like there's patterns there. They just had a false conclusion. Like one of them, I'll give you one more. There's so many, by the way. I get excited about these. The man goes to hunt, and the wife would stay at home, and there was a belief that she should not oil her hair and comb her hair, right, with oil, because the traps that her husband would set up would cause the animal to slip out of the trap. Because the wife and the husband are connected through magic, that while he was hunting and setting up traps, the animal would get out of the trap and they wouldn't have food. So don't oil your hair while I'm gone. It's like, don't step on a cracker, you break your mama's back kind of magic. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
And so there's one of the other problems with some of those tribes is they had a belief that if while you're out hunting and he gets bit by a snake, they had some superstition that she had been unfaithful. So she would be put to death. So if he was out and got bit by a snake, that was her life. Poor woman that did not have any say and had no, it was just believed that that was like an omen that if he got bit, she was being deceptive and did something behind his back. I mean, that's just probably one example of one culture and like, but it's interesting. They connect things that may not be there. And then someone starts connecting things and sees that they are there. We see that with the pre-Socratics. We see how intelligent they were. They were very scientific minded. They do start to gravitate toward the one idea, maybe to try and make it make sense. But I'm at a point where I'm sure you probably don't necessarily need that in order to go, okay, does science have to have that in order to make it make sense? No. But that's part of our process, right? Like part of the whole journey.
It's been a human journey. And how we got here is not necessarily the way we don't have to stick with everything that got us here, but acknowledging that it played a role in our journey is something we should do. And, I think about the way we have instincts that don't make us good at truth naturally. And we kind of had to develop like science and philosophy and stuff over time, even though we had it a little bit. So to like kind of calibrate us better with our relationship with truth, but if that's because we have instincts that do not make us good with truth, like for example, let's say we have instincts that make us tribalistic,
right?
Make us socially tribalistic. We're likely to have kind of like us versus them thinking. We're good, they're bad. We get to live, they don't. And also susceptible to things like we're all going to agree to each other more. Maybe we're susceptible to like propaganda, and that doesn't help us in the truth game, but it might help our group be cohesive and survive, which has led to so if we have these instincts that are not good at truth, as well as some that are related to truth, like memory is a positive one, right? Like why did they want to not get burnt by the fire again? Because our memory has us associate things with what we've already experienced with it, and then we expect the same stuff because there's an association from the memory in our mind,
right?
Like that's, and can you imagine these precepts? They want us to like somehow go against all our instincts because we don't believe in their God, to somehow like try to believe in a chaotic universe or something.
Well, that
makes it's not even possible.
Yeah, I think that, again, it's a weird thing, like even hearing Christian apologists that I've seen online say, well, if this isn't true, I might as well go murdering. Like David Wood, right? He said this on record in his debates with Matt Dillahunty, for example. If Christianity isn't true, I might as well go be the murderer that I am, and do the evil. And I'm like, dude, what? It's to me, it's just so weird. And that kind of gets to your point about like, if it's not true, I should go do whatever I want. And that's the thing. It's like, you want to do that? Because I don't want to do that. I don't want to do these things, yet I don't buy your precept. I don't buy your position at all. You know what I mean?
I think people are, because of living for what this other being wants in their mind, they're not familiar with what they would really want. They just don't even, you know what I mean? Like, and like, it's strange that I don't find it weird because of my nihilistic phase, where like, I get it. I kind of get it. I don't remember ever saying something like that to somebody, but I think it's also like an argument they're making, they're trying to push the point, but I've heard it to my face. Christians have told me that to my face, and it doesn't make you want to keep talking to somebody.
I don't
like, oh, you ready? You want to kill someone? Like, this is not good.
The other problem is that a lot of people who are raised in the Christian church don't really have knowledge of an alternative. That's all they know. Right. It's the water that they breathe, right? The fish in the bowl. They don't know.
They don't know they're wet.
And then apologists kind of take advantage of that if they have heard 100 arguments from people who are sophisticated and have philosophized and recognized you don't need to ground this in a deity in order to be good. The Euthyphro arguments come up, all sorts of interesting things. And you'll notice most people don't know those arguments. You know what I mean? They don't know how to reason ethics apart from that idea. And so it's very difficult. They fall into traps you're describing. They think there's nothing, there's no reason to have it. And you know, there's ways in which you can recognize these things and get better educated. Real quick, Scott Fraser, 250. Thank you so much for becoming a member. I don't know if you're in the live chat while we're here, or if you just are randomly checking out one of my prior videos on MythVision and it just notified me in the middle of the stream that you just became one. Thank you so much. Appreciate you joining in case you see this. Have you read The Believing Brain?
No, I don't.
Michael Shermer wrote a book called The Believing Brain. Fascinating book, in my opinion. It's another one of those sciencey types. And there was this guy in the 70s who got visited by a UFO. Now, UFO then, at the time, wasn't like today. Now they've shifted it to just be unidentified object. Now they have some other term that they want to use, professional for this. But he had been visited by an extraterrestrial, a real being, right? I'm couching these terms of what he says. And in the book, Michael Shermer walks you through what happened. It's fascinating. So for like a decade or two, like this guy is like, he is fully convinced that somehow they spoke to him, all right, at night. He's in his bed. He has an experience. They spoke to him 17 words. And they said, you have to tell the president of the United States. So he goes to like FBI offices. He is literally trying to get the president's attention. I have 17 words I must tell you. And they're going, get out of here, nutcase. They're just shooing him away. And he's insisting to be able to speak to the president. He's demanding it. They're like about to arrest him. He's getting over the top. Like, dude, something's wrong with you, right? That's how they're acting. And he's like, no, I really heard it. I'm telling you, this is real. I need to warn you and let you know you need to understand this. So years go by. He can't get the president. He starts going to these meetings. He starts going around and like conferences and telling people and like being able to speak and share with them. There's 17 words I cannot say. I have to tell the president, but they're really visiting us and they're talking to me. Michael Shermer befriends this guy. Michael Shermer's he's a brain scientist, right? I think it's like psychological, something to do with that, Michael Shermer, right? Okay. And he is communicating with this guy and he befriends the guy. And the guy goes, I'm not telling you 17 words, like, because he knows, you know, that one of the reasons he found out about him was through this idea that he said he's been visited. And he said, I'm not telling you, so don't even ask. And he's like, that's fine. I just want to get to know you. So he gets to know the guy. They get to really know each other. They're going to Mills, all that. Finally, after getting to know him, Michael Shermer goes, let me take a guess. Let me take a crack at it. If I guess what those 17 words are and I get most of them right, then at that point, you got to just tell me. Because I've got most of them right. Okay. And he's like, okay. All right. Most of them. All right. That makes sense. So he goes, ultimately, something in the book goes into more detail. He says, they want to tell us they love us. They want to tell us that we're not an enemy, that we're not here to harm you. We love you. And he's like, how did you know? And he's like, well, when I talked to you, I did a little digging. You told me about you were going through a divorce around the same time. You told me about your situation with your job. You told me about this, that. You told me about this, that. Like he did some digging by just letting the guy tell his own experience. And through the experience, he was able to determine in his mind, psychologically, this man was going through some traumatic breakup and he needed to feel loved. Wow. So when he needed to feel loved, the ETs wanted him to know that they love us. Okay. And that was important. His experience was profound and it was something psychological. And so that Shermer goes for the rest of the book to point out that humans are even more superstitious than the rest of the animals we have on Earth. that our brains, our frontal lobe cortex, the advancements in our minds are so superstitious. They're beyond the typical superstition you find in the animal kingdom. And I found it a fascinating book. Toward the end, he gets into conspiracy theories. He gets into 9/11. He gets into all sorts of stuff and starts to show you this. You see the like trajectory of the psychology and everything that's going on in the science to finally get into like modern conspiracies and stuff. And I'm like, yo, I've never heard anything explained like this. They wouldn't have taught this in church for sure, you know?
Which brings me to the question of like, if we are super susceptible to stuff like that, and we have, like I was saying before, we have instincts that are not necessarily conducive to truth, like don't make us super good at truth, which is why we need all these, you know, critical thinking processes. How do we find healthy outlets for these parts of our human nature, these instincts, you know? And I think for me, one of the big answers is conscious use of the imagination, right? We do it. We read fiction, we watch movies, play video games. Or like for like our tribalism, like sports could be a healthy outlet for tribalism, as long as you're not like a hooligan fighting other sports fans in the streets. And I have met one of those.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I actually met one that was an NFL team hooligan. Not a soccer hooligan in the UK, which I think it's more prevalent. But like, you know, healthy outlets for like our instincts. So I think like sports is probably a healthy outlet for our tribalism, right? Like we don't have to really kill each other. We'll have competition, you know, but we shake hands at the end and all this kind of thing. And I feel like, you know, maybe imagination and myth, you know, we could still read myth and be inspired by it, but we know we're using our imagination. We're not. And when it resonates with us, we don't assume it's because it's resonating with me because it's really true about this thing out there. No, like that's the skeptic is like, you know, can enjoy it. It resonates with me, but it's just, maybe it might say something that's true about us or me or your mind, or, you know what I mean? But it's not telling us. So anyway, so like, I feel like imagination is a big part of it. And I've kind of come around to like, well, can we as skeptics engage with and be inspired by religion in the imagination column? Like, can we kind of re-engage in that way? So that's kind of something I'm still exploring.
You know, I've had many people come to me years ago saying, Derek, many people who are leaving religion need a community. And they're like, really, we should have a community where we have a myth that is understood to be a myth, right? That is not to be taken literal, as kind of like our own little story. And I think they're right to that to some degree. You know, there is a story, I think, even though I haven't formulated anything concrete or anything like that as a myth that we have for MythVision, we do have a cohesive bond. A lot of our followers and fans and stuff do have a deep connection to what we do here. But I also know that if you take that too serious, if you go too far with this, or you don't have the component of the literal nature of it, things may never stay. There may not be the glue. The glue might be the delusion that we have to convince ourselves it ultimately is literally true for many people. I don't know. I mean, look at like Star Wars, right? The religion, you know, that goes on in Star Wars, Jedis. Right? Yeah, the Jedis and stuff. So can we come up with a fun mythology that is harmless, if anything, encourages good, encourages community, all of that kind of stuff, without the dogma, without the threats of immortality or damnation? And that stuff is a fear tactic to get people to. I don't feel a fear tactic at all with Star Wars. I just think it's a fun, imaginative, like you described, purposeful engagement with the material. And, you know, Richard C. Miller, you've seen me interview Richard C. Miller. He thinks that that's how the material of the Gospels was intended originally, was that it was more cultic, and it was meant to be intentionally indulged, that they weren't writing historiography wanting you to buy it literally. That's his interpretation, but much more as cultic material, a category that was not to be taken as, oh, I'm writing what literally happened as history. He doesn't think that's how it was. And that Christians eventually, in debating others, debating amongst themselves, calloused that idea about this material. And then eventually the idea that it had to literally be what happened and we have to die in the hill historiography eventually becomes the interpretation, but that's not how it was initially. And you have to think, if Matthew is copying 90% of Mark and changing it intentionally, does Matthew not know that that did not happen? Does Luke, when he changes Mark specifically, or you can go with the far and say, or some form of Q that like Q plus Papias, that Luke knows Matthew and Mark. When he changes those stories, he knows and is writing his. Does he not know that his didn't happen or theirs didn't happen? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, so that literal,
we talked about this recently on the phone a little bit, right? And it's like, we think they're probably in such a different headspace. This is like pre-historiography as we know it, like maybe post-Enlightenment or something like that. And so like they're thinking totally different than us. And so it makes me wonder, like, when Matthew adds guards by the tomb, okay? And he's like, that's a polemic. Probably people were saying, they could have stole the body. And he went to add the guards. But like, is he actually even trying to lie and say, I know there were guards there? Or is he like, the meaning of the story is that they couldn't have stole the body. Like, I'm telling the story in a way that's consistent with them not stealing the body because that's what I believe, not because I'm saying there are actually guards there. Right. But the version of the story I'm telling reflects what I believe, like, historically, theologically.
It's a tug
you know what I mean?
War.
It's not, they're not like, today we want to look at it and be like, oh, they're like Christian apologists. And he wanted to say they were really guards, but maybe he was, you know what I'm saying? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't know what to do with it because when you see the growing changes, it's hard for me to know what their intentions are. I wish we could interview all four and say, hey.
Oh my gosh.
But with that in mind, you do have Celsus, who is using Jewish critiques to point out flaws with the Christian message and about them stealing the body. There is this accusation they did steal the body. And he claims that the Jews said that, which means you have to ask yourself, is it the case when Mark writes his story and it's first getting off the ground, someone hears this and goes, the women went and told no one for they were afraid? Where'd the body go? The disciples took it. So now Matthew writes, hey, they couldn't have, was it Matthew? Yeah, Matthew with the guards, correct? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Matthew does one up. Matthew keeps the stone in front. So Mark has the stone rolled away when the women come up to the tomb. It's already open. When you get to it in Matthew, it's closed. And there's guards and you have the narrative and all that. It takes an angel to come down and say, hold on, watch this. Remember, it was closed. And then it's empty. So there's no way he couldn't have got out unless he's divine. And so it's like, are they trying to deal with critiques, or is it more imaginative? Because Richard Miller pointed out that in that time, only gods can traverse through walls and yet still remain physical. Like, I'm talking about solid, okay? Whereas a phantom goes through walls and your hands will go through them. And then this reminds me of docetism and all that kind of stuff too. But anyway, I think this is interesting because it is the empty tomb with the stone in front of it. Is the author trying to say, watch this, when they open when an angel rolls it away and then they see that he's not in there. Well, how did he get out? Only a God could do that. Is that a theological interpretation and not a apologetic to defend against the naysayers? Eventually later it becomes an apologetic, but like, what did Matthew mean? You see what I'm trying to get at? Like, we don't know.
That's how and I think it could even be both at the same time. Whereas like, I am responding to a polemic, but he knows it's not true, but he's not, but it's like, it expresses what he believes. So, but he's still being truthful because it expresses what he believes. Like when he literally, the changes he makes to Mark include him changing the words that come out of Jesus's mouth.
Yeah.
Sometimes to make them less harsh to the disciples and stuff. Like, did he really think, I know what Jesus really said? Or does he think Jesus wouldn't have said something like that?
Right.
He would have said something more like this, you know? And I kind of think it's probably more like that.
It's probably more like that, because I think we do have an example in Thucydides. He's like the creme de la creme historian, right? The best. Okay. And Thucydides said something like, in one occasion, he tells you what someone said. He gives you a saying of someone. Now, this is the historian of historians. There's not, I think there's people on par, but like he's the one, right, that people go to. In the ancient world, nobody wrote a better history about what happened, literally, than him. And he documents what someone said. And then he said, I have inserted these words, an honest person, thankfully, where, you know, you really get to see what he's doing. He says, I've inserted these words into that person's mouth on that occasion because I suspect that's what they would have said on that occasion. So I've put those words into their mouth. It's like if I knew you, I don't even know if he knows the person he's writing the history about, but I think there's a feel you get about characters. And he's putting in there in a history something there's probably no chance in hell he had any way of actually knowing what they really said. So is that going on in the Gospels when Matthew goes, no, Jesus would never have been angry at them. Instead, he's showing, you know, niceness or politeness, and he's not calling them these names or whatever that Mark does, or whatever the example may be. Yeah. Is he assuming, kind of like Thucydides, like, no, you, Mark, have it wrong, and that Jesus would have actually done this? And so they're fixing based on their own little, what they suspect Jesus should have said. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, clearly Matthew was not a biblical literalist when he was reading Mark. He didn't take Mark like that.
No.
So why should you? Why should we?
Exactly. If I may, just to tease people with the documentary you helped script, I was going to see if we could just tease people with a few minutes of it, and then I'll drop it in the chat, hoping people can go and check it out and show you some love in that comment section too, as well as under this one. You down?
Yeah.
Just a couple minutes. Give it a couple minutes here. Good. Yeah. Okay, cool. I just want people to see what you literally, the words that you produced. I mean, there are times where I put into your mouth what I felt on the occasion were necessary. Teasing. But you are the mastermind behind this script. So everybody praise DJ Wilkins here. Bow down. Here we go. Let's hear what DJ puts together.
For 2 millennia, the story has haunted the Christian imagination. A trusted disciple dining at his master's table rises to betray the Messiah with a kiss. 30 pieces of silver, a noose in a field. The ultimate villain of sacred history, Judas Iscariot. What if I told you this infamous character, this man, whose very name became synonymous with treachery, may never have existed at all? What if the story we've been told for centuries is something far more sophisticated than simple history? What if the gospel authors, or master storytellers, weaving together threads from ancient Jewish scriptures to create a composite portrait of betrayal? The evidence is hiding in plain sight. Recent biblical scholarship has uncovered an ancient literary technique used throughout the New Testament, a technique so prevalent that it appears in roughly 1 out of every 4 scriptural quotations in the Gospels. This technique involves combining multiple passages from Hebrew scripture into seamless new creations. And when we turn this lens towards the Judas story, something remarkable emerges. Nearly every detail of his betrayal, from his name to the silver to the kiss to the Mount of Olives, can be traced back to earlier betrayal narratives in the Old Testament. Not just one source, but multiple stories woven together like threads in an ancient literary fabrication. This is the story of how biblical scholars discovered that one of Christianity's most foundational narratives may be precisely what the author of 2 Peter insisted it was not.
I love it.
A cleverly devised tale. Before we continue, if you find this investigation compelling, be sure to subscribe to MythVision. And for those who want to dive even deeper, join us on Patreon, where you'll get early access to content like this before anyone else. Now, let's examine the evidence. To understand how the Judas story may have been constructed, we first need to understand a fundamental technique of ancient writing that modern biblical scholarship has only recently begun to fully appreciate. In their landmark 2-volume work, Composite Citations in Antiquity,
By the way, you bought
a
this
team
book
of biblical
for me.
scholars demonstrated that ancient authors...
That book, you bought that book and mailed it to me, dude.
Yeah, or I sent you the gift card for it or something. Yeah.
I thought you bought it and mailed it to me. That's why I was looking for it.
I was just very excited about it. I think being able to see one of the, you got it? Nice.
Yeah.
I respect the gospel authors as creative writers, you know what I mean? Even if there's other, I don't have to respect them in every way, but like as creative writers, there's a lot of cool stuff, especially when you look at, I don't know, just like stuff that I kind of appreciate like that they're doing literarily. And I love the idea that we can, especially because it's kind of against the grain of what we've been taught to believe, see like how they actually constructed some of the text using a specific technique. I think it's super cool. Just like, let's go in the writer's room of this, TV show and see how they make up the story. It's like, I think it's pretty fascinating.
I think it is too. One of the takeaways from that was the, I'm gonna share this. Everyone, I put the link in the chat. If you're curious, put this in your queue. Go watch The Invention of Judas, where DJ has helped craft quite a fascinating point that every point of the narrative you can find in the Judas story can be traced back to a composite of literary, text writings from the sacred scripture in the LXX. So you go back, you'll find from Joseph to David with Ahithophel, all these stories are being recycled into a narrative in the New Testament for Jesus being betrayed by Judas. And I find that fascinating to me. I'm like, okay, that was really, really cool. It does raise serious doubts on, should we trust this guy really existed, or is he a fiction? Is he a made up character in order to make sense of this story about Jesus,
Yeah. And there's a fun thing about a Christian scholar, I'm pretty sure they were arguing against a translation of a word into betrayed that we talk about as well. Mm-hmm. That's like the only place outside of the Gospels that has this idea of betrayal. We can pretty much just, I think, pull the rug out from the whole thing.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating. We got a super chat for 666. No, thank you so much, Mindwise. Really appreciate it. Great guest always, Derek. Sorry if covered already. DJ, did any, as you probably found, failed messianic prophecy bother you in particular? Rock hard for Doug. Thank you so much.
Nice. Yeah, shout out to Justin from Deconstruction Zone.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was a Christian and we'd get these things that are like 300 messianic prophecies Jesus fulfilled. It's funny that the count was never consistent, Derek. Isn't that funny? The number, they couldn't kind of figure out how many of them really are there. And that just kind of probably relates to how fuzzy the interpretation or cross-referencing was. But I remember trying to look them up as a Christian sometimes, and I'd be like, what is this? How does this have to do with what's in the Old Testament? I didn't understand. It was like really, and looking back, it's such a Nostradamus in the checkout aisle of the grocery store kind of vague way. You have to kind of like, blur your sight and like look at it and make it kind of make sense. So, but it wasn't really a big part of my journey that core story probably of my deconversion, but I remember definitely looking them up and being like, I don't really understand how this connects or makes sense with a lot of the prophecies I would find in these lists.
It's a really interesting phenomena because we now know, and scholars have known for now centuries, literally like 300-400 years, critical scholars have noticed elements of this. It's only sharpened, and that is the gospel authors are using these other stories to craft theirs. Once you recognize that, like, it's like the leap to going from, well, he looks like this guy from a story they're using to write his story about. Now, I'm not saying there aren't, this is the mess, because I'm not saying there isn't some historical potential real events Jesus did that line up coincidentally with all this stuff back here, but not just coincidentally, intentionally. Take the sign prophets from Josephus. Many of them were intentionally trying to live and act like Joshua or act like Moses or trying to act like Elijah. They literally read the blueprint and said, okay, I'm going to walk like this. I'm going to talk like this. And it's not just this phenomena. We have Greco-Roman emperors that try to behave and act like Romulus. We also have not Julius Caesar, but not Pompey, but trying to think of the Julius Caesar's really close buddy. Octavian and him have beef, and they go to war. He ends up taking Cleopatra's wife. Help me out in the chat. Anybody? My brain's kind of hit a funk here. I can't think. I'm trying to think of his name. Someone in the chat will remind me. But anyway, him and Cleopatra, after Julius Caesar's been assassinated and is gone, him and Cleopatra are actually off the coast of Ephesus, and they go onto the shore, and they have a religious festival procession where he is Dionysus, she is Isis, the goddess, and the festival has all these people dressed up as Maenads and satyrs. Mark Antony. Yep, Mark Antony in the chat. Alan, thank you so much. Exit Music said Mark Antony. Appreciate that. Thank you for that. My brain was in a funk. But yeah, they were imitating older myths, older stories, and literally trying to live them out. So you have a problem. Was Jesus a messianic figure like Josephus describes, where he's intentionally trying to imitate in some way? I imagine the guy probably did in some way. The other problem is we know they're writing crafty stories, and they aren't just, this is what he literally did kind of stuff. So you have this both and tug of war. And I could see Christians reading that first part going, oh yeah, he was trying to do it because it happened. They're just documenting what he really did. And it's like, then when you see the contradictions between the texts that don't even agree in the Gospels, you go, well, what do you do with that? And then other problems that come up, so there's all sorts of stuff.
But they love to fixate on Jesus in this way. Oh, Jesus fulfilled all these prophecies that aren't actually predictions. They're just other stories that look similar. But what they don't maybe study as much is that there's already these patterns in the Old Testament. I mean, Elijah's pattern after Moses. You look at like Noah's, the fall with Noah's family, like in the garden, they fell. He creates an orchard, and like he does something forbidden with fruit. He gets drunk, and then like he's shamefully naked. His son's coming in, and there's all these like parallels to like there's like a new fall, like Noah's the new Adam. He gets the same like blessing that Adam and Eve got, like fruitfully multiply, except for now they can eat meat. And then he has a new fall kind of like thing happen again. And there's all these patterns like already there, but no one's like saying, 30 prophecies that Elijah fulfilled because he looks like Moses,
Yeah. Oh, and
but they could do that.
Yeah, they could.
They could do it.
There's more than 30, I think. I mean, examples that you could pull from the Moses narrative and see line up in the Elijah story. 72 elders. Even there's a scene with fire in the sky and clouds that are constantly coming up. So you have with Moses this pillar of fire and the clouds that. I mean, like there's a lot of elements that you go, someone's riffing from someone here. Yeah. And then I've heard of some scholars who aren't experts in that area go, did Elijah try to be like Moses and walk and act like him? And it's like, where do you draw the line here? At some point you have to go, okay, we have enough evidence on the literary side to see they're inventing, that they're crafty, that they're looking to the prior story, and they're modeling Jesus after that. That seems to be where I would start. Until I have actual evidence or good reasons, how do you find that good reason? For me, it would be embarrassments, I would imagine. Like problems, in my opinion, that even the next gospel writer seems to be a little weary of. That at least, it doesn't get you to the truth, but it's at least a criterion that might raise a problem that makes you go, whoa, what's happening there? For me, go ahead.
I was going to say, we even know that the writers of the New Testament were interested in patterns in the Hebrew scriptures, right?
Yep.
You cannot have created these composites, which combine things that are thematically linked, if they weren't reading the Hebrew scriptures intertextually.
Exactly.
They were looking for patterns. They were connecting things. So they studied patterns in the Hebrew scriptures, and then they patterned Jesus after it. So like the circumstantial evidence it's pretty strong.
I think that's a powerful point you just brought up. And in fact, again, if you missed it, on MythVision, crafted by DJ Wilkins, the script, I just did the editing part and the narrating. You highlight how many different sections in the Hebrew scriptures, the Septuagint, are they drawing from to create this Judas narrative? What's more probable? They're crafting a story looking for patterns, because it's not just patterns of like, a certain prophet. We must stick to this prophet. No. They're looking for, hey, I'm looking for suffering. Oh, I'm looking for betrayal. I'm looking for, a theme of betrayal or denial or some time of rejection or something that's going on there. They find that element, and we know that it's working. We know that these composite citation scholars are catching this, because in the New Testament too, I think this is a big giveaway, is that 1 in every 4 citation of scripture. What I mean by that is when the New Testament says it is written by the prophet so-and-so, and you read it, if it's Isaiah, you find out real quick, it's not Isaiah alone. Now, some of them even mess up. Right. And I was looking this up too. There are times where they quote a prophet and it's not that prophet at all. It's an error. And I was like, what? Hold on. They didn't even quote the right prophet at all in one of the gospels. I think it's Luke, but it might be Matthew. But most of these are, the 1 in 4 are composites. So they'll say the prophet Isaiah says, and then they pull from Zechariah. So they mesh 2 prophets into one saying. And that's why they need to watch this documentary that we made called The Invention of Judas, because once you see they're doing it with citations, then you look at the stories and you realize what they're doing to invent Judas, and what else are they inventing? That's the problem, bro, if we're being honest.
It's why the scholars started with citations, right? Because they want to be careful. They know when you start looking at, things are very probabilistic. You're trying to figure out what somebody did, that kind of thing. I'm assuming that's why they start with citation, because they do set up at the end that they're going to explore allusions in a follow-up volume 3 of the study, which we hopefully will see soon released here. But, when you look at the quotations, it's like, hey, I'm telling you, I'm pulling this from the scriptures. Here's the quote. You go look for it, and all the text is not there together.
Yeah.
And then you look somewhere else, and the rest of the text is over here. And then you look at the 2 passages, and they have some kind of similarity. And then you see that pattern over and over and over again with these examples, where it's like, oh, they're like associating these things that are connected and then combining them together. This is like something they keep doing. And it's like, how else could you explain what's happening? Like, it's just, it's very strong confidence.
I think it is. Yeah.
And then that increases the probability that when you then see things that are not quotations, they're allusions, but they follow the same pattern of combining these thematically linked things together, it just increases the overall probability that, if it looks like they're doing it again, then maybe they really are doing that again.
And now you just got to do your homework and go and search and find where they're drawing it from. Mindwise says, I think Justin would say they used Greek. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, Mindwise. It's not just Justin. Justin would be echoing the scholarship because the New Testament is quoting the Greek of some form of Greek Old Testament. It may not be the exact Septuagint we have today, but it's probably closely related to it, of course. And yes, he would be right. And then I got another super chat here as well by Jason.
I could add something to that, by the way.
Sure, yeah.
I was going to say that, if you look at the study, the composite citations in antiquity, they include the Greek. They're assuming Septuagint is where they're sourcing it, the Greek Hebrew scriptures. And if you look at the examples, they've got the Greek side by side with the source passages and the quote citations in the New Testament. And they're like, hey, underline this part from here and this part's in bold from there. Mm-hmm. So they're comparing the Greek for the source for these.
And it's so obvious. And then Jason Kakulo, thank you for that super chat. Con artists or accidental non-professional historians of Jesus who included word of mouth gossip and added it to Mark cumulatively? Con artists or accidental non-professional historians of Jesus who included word of mouth gossip and added it to Mark. I'm not sure how to take this question, but
it's hard to wrap your mind around. What if you just I almost have to take just one of the first parts.
Yeah.
Con artist of Jesus who include, or accidental non-professional listeners, just who included word of mouth gossip and added to Mark cumulatively. Yeah, I don't know what are they trying to say that oral tradition is or isn't a part of it? Is it one way or the other? Because I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time understanding that exactly. And I don't know about word of mouth gossip. It wouldn't shock me though, if that is what they're talking about, is that there were traditions or word of mouth, someone is telling stories. It wouldn't shock me if something in the Gospels clearly comes from some form of a tradition, no doubt. I don't think every single thing you read in the Gospel of Mark, the earliest gospel we have, must come from the scripture. Like we have to find an antecedent within the Jewish, Greek Old Testament and explain every single piece of data coming from that. I think there are other ways and other materials that are probably being utilized into the gospel, but that is the difficult problem we have. That conundrum of, is this episode a memory or is an allusion potentially to scripture? I don't know what to do with that. And to pretend that they only could draw from scripture to explain some of this stuff is difficult. I think that's why anyone who's like, I'm not certain, but they have an opinion about stuff, they come at this with like not so much certainty, is a powerful point in my opinion. I don't think you should have it your head too strong on like, no, Jesus really did this thing. And it's like, when you see them doing what you're showing from this composite stuff, the Judas material and all these other narratives, you do have to pause and go, what really is?
Yeah.
What really was something he did or a memory?
And when you look at specific examples, let's say we talked about it recently, the death of John the Baptist. The version that's in the Gospel of Mark, which is also, I think, in all the synoptics at least, is not consistent with what Josephus says. Josephus says that Herod chose to kill John the Baptist. But Mark says that the queen manipulated him into doing it. So we have a reason to doubt the historicity of the story. But we also have literary explanations from the Hebrew scriptures for a lot of the story.
Right.
We've got Mark depicting John the Baptist to look like Elijah, like in his physical description in like Mark chapter 1. And then we've got Jesus saying, when they're asked, hey, is Elijah supposed to come before the Messiah? How's that? Like, yeah, I tell you, he has come, referring to John the Baptist, which Matthew makes explicit. He's like, I tell you, yeah, Elijah has come, and his enemies did to him exactly what they wanted to, as it is written. And if you look at what's written about what the enemies of Elijah wanted to do back in Kings, Queen Jezebel wanted to kill him the way he killed the prophets of Baal, putting them to the sword. And, whether, and some have suggested, like Bishop John Sully Spong, that putting the sword could involve, like, if you're going to kill someone with a sword, what are your options to do it efficiently? You cut their head off as one of them. And that's exactly what a new manipulative queen, like Queen Jezebel, manipulating the king of, the Jews, Herod, in Jesus' time. She manipulates him like Jezebel did the guy before to kill John the Baptist. And unlike Queen Jezebel, who vowed to do the same thing to Elijah that he had done to the prophets of Baal, and then failed to pull off doing that, she said, Queen Jezebel actually finishes the job of what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
So we have a reason to doubt it historically because it's inconsistent with other texts, and we have a literary explanation at the same time.
Yeah. The
There was a probability, and there's other examples, like that.
Yeah, I'm curious again. Just thank you, Jason. Another one from Jason. Thank you, Jason. Jason says Paul, after 39 AD, was a Roman agent tasked with destroying Judaism due to repeated rebellion. Jews did not want to kill Christ. Jews did not criticize Jesus for healing on the Sabbath. Judas Iscariot was a fake, made-up person. There's a lot there. So I don't read Paul that same way as a Roman agent, even though there is a book. What is the name of that book? Is a woman who wrote a book. Paul as a Roman agent. Let me write book. There's a book that actually goes down this Operation Messiah. It's called. And it was written, it's called Operation Messiah, St. Paul, Roman Intelligence, and the Birth of Christianity by Rosemary Sheldon. And I've heard about this in the past. I heard I tried to interview her. I actually emailed her and she declined. This is years and years ago. And I think she just had too much fear. I think maybe she had been threatened, for this idea that she had. I don't read Paul as a Roman agent. I just think he's Hellenistic. And I think that gets easily confused with like he's an agent for the Roman side because he's so Gentile oriented, if that makes sense. But tasked with destroying Judaism due to repeated rebellion. So this is the idea that he's trying to, it's kind of odd because he's getting Gentiles. That's why this whole thing doesn't quite make sense to me. Like if Paul's mission was to go and try and make Jews no longer believe in the messianism by teaching something that's non-messianic, and we know Josephus talks about how that messianic fervor caused a lot of these people, that caused the Roman Jewish War, that caused Bar Kokhba that we eventually see. It's messianic thinking that causes this kind of behavior. You would think Paul would go after Jews with his message to get them to calm down. Instead, he goes to Gentiles, which is why I see a flaw in this, in my opinion, just not following the logic, in my opinion. But Jews did not want to kill Christ. I do think that, sure, there might have been some people, if you grant the cleansing of the temple scene and many of the, people Jesus may have been arguing that hated him, maybe they wanted him dead, a couple, but I think that's fiction. I think that what Mark's doing is scapegoating the Jews and making Pontius Pilate and the Romans look like they're not, we don't want anything to do with this. And I think the earliest gospel is trying to portray Jews as bad, even in Mark, and Gentiles good. And I think that's what's going on right out the gate. And then Judas Iscariot. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, Paul definitely, he does succeed at co-opting the early Christian movement and putting a totally different spin on it in a big way. But yeah, it's a good point. Like, why would the Romans pay him to like make Christianity bigger? Like, did they like the idea that they were trying to squelch? I mean, it's kind of
maybe they're reading into the book of Acts. Like he's trying as an agent to get Jews because he goes synagogue to synagogue to synagogue to synagogue. We see in Acts. Maybe he's trying and it's failing. He's a paid agent, if you take this hypothesis, and he's trying to get Jews in synagogues to like no, accept our version of this stuff, and they're not digging it. Okay, now that's granting Acts, the portrayal we're seeing in Acts, that Paul's bumping into many Jews. He's interested in Jews. But even like John Dominic Crossan does think even the letters reflect this idea with churches and like going to synagogues. He thinks that Paul's sniping synagogues. Like he's looking and he's going and grabbing their God-fearers. So he's trying to go from synagogue to synagogue and then going outside and going, hey, listen here, Titus. These people here, they see you less than. We got a program where you're equal to these people. Come join us. But that's different from the Roman agent trying to tame the messianism and all that. You know what I mean?
I really like, even if I'm not sure if it's what really happened, I like the idea. It's a fun like theory, and like I'd love to see the fan fiction of this version of like how could this have happened. It would just be a fun story,
Imagine if we could make a movie, like if we had the funds and there was like just some absolute billionaire who's like into like making Hollywood flicks and they really know what they're doing, could run some of these. I mean, dude, everything you see we edit is like, it's to maybe like the average person, it's top tier, but like when you get into editing, you realize like I'm doing the best I know how. Look, again, just to hit play. This is all like, I'm paying editors to do this.
Including the writers of the New Testament, frequently combined words from multiple scriptural passages into single quotations. These composite citations blend separate sources together so seamlessly that they appear to be quoting a single text. The scale of this practice is staggering.
So all of this is like stock footage, stock images from like Storyblocks and other softwares that we have to pay for the material to have license to use. Music we have to pay for, so we have software there. But it's all like we made it. It's not like Hollywood level quality graphics and like cameras on the ground in the locations somewhere in, a remote place where there's a hill and a mountain and a fire or whatever. Like, I wish we had like a movie production level thing going on where we could really give the critical historical reimagination side a fair shake, not the typical we have another one by Lionsgate, bless you, the Gospel of John story. It's like, no, what if we gave like an actual critical historical movie portraying what a particular view of how this thing started off, and then do another one of another model and let that one, how did all Christianity begin in this model? I'm flirting right now. I don't know if you know this. Did I tell you I'm flirting with the zealot Jesus, the radical, violent Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine this dude's like sword wielding, and he's like legit, very, very violent, or at least not very violent, but like violent enough where he's cleansing temples. Peter's cutting ears off in gardens. Like, you've got like problems where this might be a violent Messiah, the term Messiah, and already in the Gospels, they're suppressing the reality. And then Jesus being next to Barabbas in Mark, it says that Barabbas he was a lestes or a lestai, right? Which is literally this insurrectionist. Go read Josephus. He describes them and he was a murderer during the insurrection. When Matthew rewrites that scene, guess what he says? He just says he was a criminal. He uses the term criminal. He doesn't mention the insurrection. He erases the memory of a trial happening during an insurrection. But the fact that you have a memory of him dying between two other lestai, these are people that weren't thieves. That's a bullshit word we've added in English to me. Oh, they were stealing apples down there. No, they weren't. They were violent. And Jesus is between two violent criminals during an insurrection who's being punished for being a Messiah. What was the Messiah supposed to do? He's entering into a city on a donkey like King David. He's seen as someone who's supposed to reestablish Israel. And if the Messiah wasn't supposed to be violent, bro, I don't know what was. And so they reimagined him. And I want the movie of the violent Messiah and what happened with cognitive dissonance and the movement to reimagining Jesus. They can't let go. You know what I mean? That's what I want.
You mentioned the Galilee origin stuff you were telling me about on this is really cool. Like, and I think you mentioned that like they were living in poverty and squalor, mud huts or something, and there was like big Greek like buildings being built there that they're looking up at as they're being, they're just there in the dirt. And I'm like, maybe like a thought like the main point for what you're saying is how would they feel towards the Romans? Like how would people from Galilee, and there's other things too, there's the history of people from Galilee being uprising and like them that being squelched, and like what would your sentiments be being raised in this group, and how would you see the Romans? Would you be like this, let's just love everybody, love your enemy? Is that how Jesus would be coming out of Galilee? I don't know.
I think it's important to point that out because Judas, the Galilean, was from Galilee, same as Jesus. He cleansed the temple, same as Jesus, according to the Gospels. And if you go read Josephus, go give it a read tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Google and say, go to AI. It'll help. And trust me, it's not going to give you any hallucinations. It knows Josephus. Trust me, I've done it enough. Get your Josephus. All right. You can get it for free online. You can get a translation. Go to Google and just search and say, Judas, the Galilean, cleansing the temple in Josephus. Where is it so I can read it? Find the source, go to Antiquities of the Jews, and you will find a passage. When he cleanses the temple, it is violent. It is not a pacifist in here just smacking a few donkeys on the ass and going, hey, get out of here, animal. You've turned my father's house into a den of thieves. Bad, bad people. And then that's it. And then, no, this guy, it's indicating much more than that. And if you just read a historical account about what happened when he cleansed the temple, riots ensued, violence ensued, death happened. And sure enough, that's when Rome, around this time, goes to Galilee, Sepphoris specifically, which is the city right next to Nazareth. And I've been there. We drove through Nazareth. Right there next to Sepphoris was where Nazareth, the mud huts, where they're watching this jewel of the Galilee be built by the Romans, who are literally like just slaughtered a bunch of their probably friends and family who are leading an uprising from the Galilee. He came down, of course, and he's leading a tax revolt. You get questions about taxes to Jesus. I mean, there's too much going on, DJ, to not imagine what if we had that picture, not Mark's image of it. It's Mark's catering to the Romans. He is in a way taming something, it seems. And by the way, the scholar that I emailed today, actually, I was so glad to hear from him, but it's Fernando, and I'm probably going to butcher this, Bermejo Rubio from Spain. He is the leading academic today. He has taken everything, SGF Brandon, Reimaris, the various critical scholars in history, Reza Aslan, you name it. Reza's more recent, but he's taken the best arguments you can make for a violent Jesus, and he has the best methodology, and he's like contemporaneous. I'm trying to interview him because I think there's some clues. There's some giveaways to me, man. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword, So
because if the scholars are right when they say the original Jesus was a strict Jewish Jesus, the original disciples were like strictly Jewish. They were not reflected in what Paul is about. He just happened to co-opt Christianity and also make it palatable to the Gentiles, which would include, hey, they are the Romans, right? Like, you're gonna tell them, hey, this Jesus guy, he wanted to slay you and take over your land, and or whatever, or have a rebellion and rule the earth as God's chosen king and stuff. Is that what you're trying to sell the Gentiles? So
interesting.
We've lost so much of like, what did the real Jesus say? Because the first gospel is written after Paul and influenced heavily by Paul. Even Matthew seems to be influenced by Paul in new and additional ways. and he's like trying to make it more strictly Jewish, but like so much is unclear about what was the original Jesus that this kind of theory seems like it becomes much more possible. Like, who's that? What was he really like before these changes?
Right. That's a good point. And Jason, thank you for the super chat. Again, is Paul infiltrating the earlier movement and hijacking it to this? I don't know. There's a scholar too. I got another scholar. Man, I'd go on. And there's another academic who does think there's something. You and I need to do our documentary though, because you're crafting another script. For those who don't know, the Bright Mind and DJ's Skull is crafting a script. You and I brainstormed. We've talked about it for hours together, but you're getting into the weeds with time you have that I don't, and that is exploring this idea of we might even throw something a little further than the typical, which most scholars think Mark's using Paul. But what are the implications of some interpretations we might see in the text? And we want to let people think through it. We're not trying to tell you what to think, but we might have found some interesting stuff. And this might turn into an article, bro. We should probably co-write an article, have it peer reviewed or something, because I think there's something to this. And I was told by James Barker, PhD, who said, when I told him like the full skinny on this, from my mind, and you've gone deeper, he said, man, I've never heard anyone write an article on that way. He said, you guys, you really should. He was blown away by it. Anyway.
Awesome. No, I'm looking forward to it.
William Ahrens. Oh, sorry.
Don't know how much I want to give away, but it's like I think there's a battle within the New Testament. That's all I'm going to say. So,
there's definitely a battle. Yeah. I think there is definitely. What that battle is hopefully persuasive if the evidence is convincing, and we'll lay it out, a good case. William Ahrens, thank you again for the super chat and for calling in yesterday with me and Neil. Before I was ordained a deacon in 2012, I told the rector of the church that I saw much of the Bible as legends, such as David, as a type of Robin Hood, so to speak, despite saying that I was still ordained a deacon. See, now that's a cool church. When a church is down for you having an imagination and then also willing to see things as legend and myth. Now, maybe he was okay with you saying it about David. What if he talked about David's descendant named Jesus, according to the Gospels? Would they still let you, William? Would they still let you get ordained if you said that about Jesus? I don't think there's magic, but he's like a Robin Hood. He's taken from the rich to give to the poor. He's trying to dissolve these money exchangers and the Romans and give to those people who don't have as much. Blessed are the poor, right? But I don't think in the magical sense Jesus existed. What would the church do then? It's a good question. Did you want to comment on that? I feel like
yeah, well, just to say, I feel like ministers like that, from our understanding of the people who wrote the Bible, that we don't think they thought they were writing literal history. So like ministers like that are more like the original religious people who created these scriptures.
Right.
So I respect it far more than like biblical literalists. I understand biblical literalism helps you to try to hold it together in this critical age, in a certain way, but it doesn't fit the text. And I think what this guy's saying is he's more like what the original believers really were. They knew they were not telling literal history. That's what.
Yeah, I'd go a step further and just say you can find some pretty ugly things about David. It depends on which account you're reading too, because David has done some horrific stuff in his stories as well. And I don't think the Bible's shy about that. According to what they're trying to narrate, they're not shy about it. And it's not just the Bible that does this. And I'm saying biblical books when I say Bible, because it's not a Bible back then. But you get this in Greek myth. Heracles goes mad, driven mad by a goddess, and kills his whole family. And then he has to do 12 labors to try and, kind of make up for that, atone for what he did. Various other myths have the narrative where the protagonist does something horrific or bad, an immoral thing, or lies. Odysseus, I think of in the Odyssey. And that's kind of the point of the story. They had a different thing. What saddens me about the New Testament, and this is something Dennis MacDonald, grabbing his book, where did I set it? I had it yesterday with Neil, and someone asked about parallels or like looking for mythic stuff. This book, Mythologizing Jesus, from Jewish teacher to epic hero, Dennis R. MacDonald. I think this is a great book because in the end, he's like, he tells his grandson, which story, because he's paralleling the story of the Gospels with Odyssey. Which story do you like better? He says. And he goes, well, I like the Odyssey. The Greek story is more fun, to his grandson. He goes, but which one would you rather live like and behave like? And he's like, oh, I'd rather be more like this nice, gentle person who's trying to say, be kind and not killing and all that kind of stuff, right? The model we have of Jesus in our Gospels today. And it's really interesting to hear that. But for me, to be honest, the too good to be true Jesus isn't really interesting to me. It's too good to be true. It's not, it's like an impossible, you're putting someone on this pedestal that is not achievable, in my opinion. And I like to see the, not, oh, you just died and then God raised you in 3 days and that was the permanent atonement for all sin. It's like, you would imagine an eternal atonement like Prometheus, who literally saves humanity through fire. And then he's still on that mountain somewhere, according to the myth, for all eternity. Zeus is torturing him for what he did to help humanity. Now that's an atonement, not a couple nights in the tomb sleeping. And then he wakes up and he ascends and he's all powerful. And his life, he's not sharing the same shortcomings and obvious falls that we do. That human Hercules who made serious mistakes, the David who's effed up majorly, the Odysseus who's done crazy bad things, I relate to more realistic than the perfect image of, like, I don't know. It's just a personal aesthetic thing to me that I'm not as interested in. Maybe that's why I like the Old Testament more than I did the New. As a Christian.
Can I take the other side of it a little bit?
Please.
I would say, I do not want to be like the historic Jesus. I don't want to be an apocalyptic prophet. And I don't want to be like a religious extremist insurgent or whatever, any of those things. But the Jesus of the Gospels, removing some of those elements, because he's predicting the end of the world and all those kind of things. That's why we have those theories and understandings of them. But like the moral Jesus, the Jesus that's like the best person you can imagine in your imagination, which is really what Jesus was to me as a Christian, right? There's a reason that when I opened the Old Testament, I was like, this isn't the guy I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
Is the best person you can imagine, I mean, I'd rather be like that Jesus, but I don't think it's the historic one.
Right. Yeah, I just wasn't I don't know, the stories didn't hit the same, but
yeah, I mean, he's walking around teaching. It's not a hero story, what I mean?
That's probably what it was too. He's like, let me say this nice thing, and then I'll give you another parable, and I'll say another nice thing, and I'll give you another parable. Right. And I'm like, I kind of liked the, when Leviathan is being tamed like a bird in Job. I kind of liked the chaotic war. Mm-hmm. It's like Game of Thrones or something, like you really, I feel like that's how the Old Testament felt, was like it had that fun adventure, crazy, chaotic insanity about it that you would see in a Game of Thrones show. Whereas you get to the New Testament, it's like, all right, ladies and gentlemen, the Son of God has entered into the scene. Now we're going to tell his story. Are you ready? So now he visits Satan into the wilderness. Of course, I'm being funny here. And it did feel like not the same vibes at all. But neither did the genealogies in the Old Testament, or some of the prophets were hard to drudge through. I just wasn't, it was difficult, some of them. I enjoyed Hosea. There were different prophets that I enjoyed, and then some of them was like, there were moments I enjoyed it, and then there were moments where I'm like, drudging through, Yeah,
all those begats, I mean, had no context for finding that meaningful, but somebody probably did at one point in time, right? Those names meant something to somebody, but for me, it's just the eyes are glazing over.
That's it.
And 2,000 years. I mean, man, it's hard to. That was something even as a Christian. It's like this thing is definitely not written for our times. We may have different sensibilities and a different kind of expectation of what's engaging, like storytelling and literature now.
Right.
It's got a tough gig there. It needs an upgrade. Could use a good editor. There's a lot of things you could be improved.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, William Arons. I appreciate that. Jason Kakulo, appreciate that. Super chat again. Barabbas is Hebrew for Jesus. So it's not Hebrew for Jesus, but I know what I think they're getting at. In the earliest manuscripts in Matthew, and this is noticed by Origen. Origen was a little disturbed by this when he came across it. Some of the early manuscripts in Matthew actually have the name of Barabbas is Jesus or Yeshua, Barabbas. Barabbas is Aramaic for son of the Father. Literally means son of the Father, Barabbas. The name Jesus gets redacted by some editors in the following century or two into the Common Era. You have literally Jesus Barabbas, Jesus son of the Father, Yeshua son of the Father, next to Jesus son of the Father, son of God. Okay? Side by side. One's a murderer, one is innocent, supposedly. Okay? And that is an interesting thing that I hope to cover in a future documentary, where I wonder if behind, because I do think this is a scapegoat setup. They're intentionally trying to show you the sacrificial kind of scapegoat model in Matthew. And they might be doing it in Mark, where you release, the one that has your sins into the wilderness, you release, and the other one goes and maybe gets slaughtered in this particular account. I know even Richard Carrier talks about this in a lot of depth, but I wonder if there's a memory behind this, that Jesus Barabbas, the murderer, is Jesus. I mean, obviously, speculation. There's no way to know. But if you do take all of the cumulative evidence of the kind of behavior his cult had, his associations, they say who you associate with is who you're like, right? They say that your top 5 friends usually are a mirror of who you are. And his close companions, one of them was a zealot. Go read Josephus, find out what the zealots were. One of them was Iscariot, or as some scholars think, that term means Sicarii. Go read about the Sicarii, the assassins, the deceptive ones who would shank you close with a knife. They get close to you and they're deceptive, and they would cut you in public places. And they wouldn't even know who did it. In crowded areas, they'd assassinate people. Okay. And later on, we get this assassination in like the 12th century. Many of the Muslims actually imitated the Sicarii. This is where Assassin's Creed, the video game, literally has a historical memory it draws from about real assassins. And so your companions are part of associations of people who are doing murderous acts. Do you understand why I could make a pretty cool picture out of this, DJ? Like how this could end up drawing a picture that we might be like, whoa, what the hell? So I'm interested in that, man. Hold on, my mom's trying to call me here. Hey, can I call you back, Mama? I'm on a live stream.
Yeah, it's so important. It's so good.
Can I call you right back? All right, love you. Love you. Bye. My mom's calling me during a live stream. I'm like, yo, she called more than once. I'm making sure she's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you want to comment on any of that? I've rambled for a second there. And
yeah, it's really interesting. The polemic that's, blaming the Jewish people with choosing the militant, insurgent who would meet like their actual expectations of a Messiah, right? By choosing Barabbas over Jesus. And then apparently crucifixion. I think you may have recently mentioned that it was reserved for people that were actually like militant uprisers or threats to Rome. Like they wouldn't just be killing the thieves that are stealing the apples or whatever. Like that was something I thought. I don't know if I heard that in a recent video or something like that, but it's interesting that, they then reverse it and have Jesus die that death. But by them freeing the insurgent militant type of figure, they're also being guilty of apparently supporting insurgents against Rome, right? Like,
right.
So it's really a like hardcore polemic. Like,
that's the problem.
Pushing guilt on them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. We are dealing with, as Paul talks about it, we're seeing through a glass dimly. We are not able to filter what really, really, really happened. And all we can do is the best we can using historical methodology and imagine what may have been there. Do you honestly think that the term Messiah had the implications the Christian Gospels say? Oh, well, what did the Jews expect? Notice the shocker even in the earliest gospel. They knew what they expected as a Messiah. Yet Jesus becomes to be the opposite of the thing they expected. Why is that? Why is that the first time you're getting Jews in history acting like, oh, no, the Messiah actually dies? No wonder this was a stumbling block to the Jews, according to Paul, because your Messiah got killed. That was not the anticipated or understood expectation. And so if a shift took place where they're now covering up or patching over some of that earlier material where a real militant, messianic, Davidic claimant, whether he did himself or his followers believe that about him, and he gets himself killed, he's surrounded by people who are also very, associated with violent groups. One of them cuts a guy's ear off in the garden, carrying a weapon that could cut someone's ear off. I mean, he gets crucified between two other violent people. He is, said in the Barabbas scene to have a murderer during the insurrection. The time this is all happening is during an insurrection. He's talking about a coin where he's saying this is a false god. He's talking about Rome the same way Judas the Galilean would probably view that. And I say probably because we don't have an account of him talking about how he viewed the god on the coin. We know he had tax revolts where he wasn't a fan of Rome taxing the way that they were on the people. And of course, this gets into some of the politics at the time where this region at one point was dominated by Jews. Herod the Great finally dies. You end up in a situation where he now takes away, because it was all ran by a Jewish leader, Idumean leader, but nonetheless Jews who built the temple. He was good with Rome, but the Jews still controlled it. Well, no, not after that. So historically, it shifts to where Rome is now instituting taxation. They're literally sending in their outsiders to come and gather taxes from the people. Judas leads a revolt, cleanses the temple, says, no, we're not paying taxes. And so this becomes a problem. And now I want to reconstruct the Jesus, that seems to be more historical rather than the theological one we're reading in the Gospels, You
got to think about the timing of it, right? Like, why did they believe he was the Messiah before he died? Like, before he was killed? Mm-hmm. How strange would it be for them to start believing he was the Messiah after he got killed, right? Like, I mean, especially for those of us who don't believe in the resurrection, it's like, oh, he got killed, and they're like, oh yeah, that guy was the Messiah. Like, no, so why did they believe he was the Messiah before he got killed and before Paul changed the story with his private revelation?
I think that's a problem, right? That curveball that you get is really, really interesting. Yeah. Anyway, Jason Kakulo, thank you again for that super chat. 600-man cohort versus a small group. So he's surrounded to publicly die a martyr, violent up until then, image cleaned up in Bible. Yes, that's the point. And in fact, that's the other point. A cohort is sent to arrest him in the garden. And the Greek term there that is describing this, I think it's a Greek, it may be a Latin loanword. I'm not really sure. I need to look at the actual term. But what is described in the gospel is a group of soldiers of up to, I believe, if it's not 600, it's like 500 or 400 men, so armed men, soldiers, to arrest him. And notice the thing Jesus says in the garden in Mark. When they come to arrest him, and they have weapons. Pull up Mark. Pull up the garden scene in Mark. Can you pull it up? Oh, you don't have your keyboard hooked up. Hold on. This is good. So Mark 14. I wish I could pull it up. I have my laptop. I don't have I got to get a new computer. This computer isn't working for streams. Mark 13, you got the Last Supper. All right. The covenant in my blood, all that. Jesus predicts Peter's denial. Okay. Then Gethsemane. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." This is that omniscient narrator that comes in, where the Abba Father stuff that you and I noticed. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then he returned to his disciples. I'm just skipping that part. Sleeping. "Simon," he said to Peter, are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Once more, he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. Now, returning a third time, he said to them, "Are you sleeping? Are you still sleeping and resting enough? The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go." And it's all exclamations, it's like urgent. "Here comes my betrayer." It says, just as he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, appeared. With him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priest, the teachers of the law, and the elders. Now the betrayer had arranged signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. The men seized Jesus and arrested him. Then one of those standing near drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. The other gospels describe this as Peter. "Am I leading a rebellion?" Jesus said. "That you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me?" You know what I'm saying?
Going out of his way to say he's not leading a rebellion.
Of course.
Why does he need to do that so much?
Why is he constantly acting like I'm not doing the thing? Why are you accusing me of doing the thing? He gets killed for the thing that's the accusation of. That he is a messianic, he's trying to claim to be a king. He's a Messiah claimant. And these Messiahs, go read Josephus, constantly were involved in acts of violence, riots, and things like that. And so I know that this is, it's reading between the lines, not the lines themselves, or reading behind the lines, not the face value of the text themselves. And when you look at those clues, you go, and then you read it next to a history like Josephus, you have red flags, right? "Every day I was with you teaching in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me, but the scriptures must be fulfilled." You know what I mean? That's a big red flag to me when you see that in the text from Mark and any gospel, really. We know what they're doing. They're pulling from the Old Testament and they're crafting stuff. So I would like to see this from scripture. Let's see if we can find some of this there. But you do have to look to Josephus, just like you did with John the Baptist. And when you do, you start going, what's up with this,
Yeah, absolutely. And that stuff about "here comes my betrayer," I'm just there's no point when I'm most am I reading a play right now? Is it character enters stage left? It's like reading Shakespeare. It's it feels very much not like history. It feels very much like a dramatized story,
Absolutely. I love it though. I do love it. It's so much fun. I mean, this is my thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. You have a passion about that. So I want to plug you. I've kept you for almost 3 hours, bro. I hope that you're not in trouble for that.
No. Not in trouble.
Yeah. We have the video coming. We're going to edit. You're still crafting. That one is, you want to tease everybody on that real quick? I know that we got into it a little bit, but I don't know.
Yeah. We're just trying to explore there being a battle, conflict down the heart of the New Testament, and who's taking what side in that battle, and what's the evidence that that's the case, and how does that all shake out?
Yeah, it's not even about the stuff we were just talking about. Yeah. What do you do? do?
John, can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
John, it says in John and stuff, it's they'll know the Christians by how they love each other. Well, the authors of the New Testament and how they seem to be talking about each other, even if they're being passive aggressively indirect about it, may not live up to that verse. That's what we're gonna see.
That'll be interesting to see. It'll be really interesting to see. By the way, someone in the chat was talking about Jay Dyer. I just noticed that. I was too busy. This guy right here, I guess he's probably a pre-sub. I imagine a tag guy. I'm not sure. Again, it is interesting. I've actually picked up a lot on philosophy since just, I'd say, within the last few months. Been reading a lot of Plato and diving in, but a lot of it is word salad. I'm not going to lie. And a lot of it is word salad built on no way of justifying those particular arguments that they're making. They're just coming up with ways in which they're trying to reason the world out. And of course, we're looking at what's in front of us. And I think Neil Simlak, Gnostic Informant, had this engagement with Jim Bob, who's like Jay Dyer's like buddy. And Jim Bob like did some anti-evolution thing and then brought up some philosophy stuff or something. And then Neil just answered with a simple thing like it was something to do with science, something to do with empirical approach. And he's like, yeah, we know that because it works. Like you can literally like see that it works.
Yeah.
Do you need to do all this in order to see that it works? We can actually evaluate that it works. And this didn't solve it. This out here did not actually give us this, right? And so I like to start with what we seem to have the most concrete in front of us. And it sounds like a lot of people want to start back here in order to justify like the things we have in front of us, and then we can work backwards. So it seems like two different kinds of approaches to the world. And I think often I brought a guy on recently. He's not obviously schooled on philosophy or apologetics. When I pressed him on Jesus, the resurrection, he went right back to creation. He went right back to God. He did what precepts do. They jump back to justify knowledge and rationale. And it's like, hold on, I asked you a simple question. What is that solid evidence that Jesus rose from the dead? Oh, no, we need to talk back here. Justify, they turn it around, they shift the burden, and it's like, man, that sucks. Because you have to start back here, and you can't just address the thing that's right in front of you because you want to build up this philosophical cumulative case that somehow justifies. But when we go to the text, there's a problem there. And in fact, because he recently debated Gnostic Informant and he wanted to debate me, I said, look, let's debate on the truth of Christianity. He said no. I can't make Jay Dyer do something he doesn't want to do. I know this shit, you know what I mean? Much better than he does. And that was my challenge because I know this shit. And he wanted to do tag. He told me, oh, so your worldview can't, he mocked me in the private chat. So your worldview, you can't defend your worldview is what he said to me. And I said, you can't defend Christianity. We're at a stalemate then, I guess, aren't we? Right. He didn't want to argue that. So what can you do at the end of the day when someone doesn't want to debate on a subject they know really well and can bring a lot of arguments and observations in the text and stuff that are red flags? And they prefer to stick to their same old thing they've been doing for a decade. He's good at doing it because he's a pro, I would say, sophist. He is what I think the sophists were really good at, and they put on a good show, and they, you know what I'm saying? So, what do you do?
What I think about it is like they have a top-down approach to the worldview, right? Authority, divine revelation. We have a bottom-up one, observation-based, Yep. And they want us, like you said, to give up basic things like expecting the world to keep working the way it is because we can't assume a God's holding it all together. So we aren't going to, do that. But like you said, utility, it has utility. And it's even worse than that because it's built into our instincts. It's built into our memory to associate things and expect them. And so what are we going to do? We're going to fight against our instincts, despite the fact that it's not only built into our instincts and it's working. Right. In all the ways that it's working. They want to all or nothing reject thinking at all. We just need to improve our thinking with science and philosophy, our relationship to truth. We don't need to ground having any kind of relationship with truth altogether that way. That's how I see it. It's built into our instincts.
Yeah, I think it is. And again, I think when people are doing that, I think that they are weaponizing it. That this is the one trick pony that they have in order to shut down any other dialogue. If you can't justify this thing, which most, I would say more people who are critical philosophers who are atheists or whatever might see these categories as things we humans have observed and put labels to and whatnot. not that they're metaphysical existent things out there, so to speak, that they would say, hey, this must be rooted and grounded in the logic of God itself and whatnot. I think that's just the older way of thinking about the world. I mean, look in John 1, right? That's echoing something you find in Jewish philosophers, like we see with Philo of Alexandria, but also in Plato. You already have this world in which they view things and how it is. And now we're living in a different era where we have this much more ground up empiricist approach, if you will, of looking and being able to evaluate things and try to understand the world we live in without postulating the explanation back here that you don't have the slightest clue as much as we don't have the slightest clue, but you pretend you have the slightest clue. Well, guess what? I have a clue about a can right now, right here. You're talking about back here to justify the can I have right now, but you don't have the slightest clue of what's back there. You don't have the slightest clue of what's ultimately behind it, and neither do I.
Right.
Who's being humble here? The one who knows, who has the justification and can be certain and confident about all these things and has that, or the one who's looking and evaluating about being the fish in the water bowl and says, you know, I'm breathing water. Hold on. What? I need to really rethink this whole thing. Maybe I'm wrong about the beliefs that I once held to. Nope. I got to die within this faith and this tradition, and I've got to make everyone else seem stupid in my rhetorical game and my script in order to try and win. It's not about an honest dialogue of research and learning. It's about a gotcha. It's what it ultimately boils down to.
If they're so confident that their God grounds reasoning for them, why aren't they confident enough that he's going to help them use it to talk to us about specific topics other than that? Instead, they just want to knock over the game board and be like, you don't get to play with me because you don't believe in my God. They're running away. It's like they're forfeiting. You know, they might as well just be like saying, giving up. You know what I mean? That's
sad. I think it's sad. And I want to make one more comment. And if I can, we'll wrap things up here, is this. I honestly, when that happened, when I started engaging the precepts, when I started to exit the faith, I had an honest question that came up that it did not help to have precepts who are trying to weaponize their arguments from honest, curious people who really do want to go, well, how come things do make sense? How come in my mind, the world does make sense? How come reason seems to, even be a thing? And how do we have calculation? And how do these questions are quelled. It's shut the fuck up and listen to me and believe my religion and my God is the explanation. You're not allowed to ask these questions from a natural world. You're not allowed to think through this in a way that allows you to consider them in an alternative path that makes better sense from the ground up, trying to reason through evolution and explain how could we have come from, really microscopic organisms through the fish stage to amphibians, to reptiles, to dinosaurs, extinction phases, finally to mammals, and mammals become us. And then we're able to reason and cognitively reflect, analyze the world, and it makes sense. And how did all that happen? That's a fascinating, I think, important question that we may not have it all figured out. We don't have it all figured out. And we're trying to think through how to make sense of that. And philosophizing about that, I think, is definitely worth it. And the precepts have given me that kind of motivation to want to think about it, but they don't want you to think about that. They want you to be like, no, they want to kind of do what James Tour did about abiogenesis. It's not possible. It hasn't been proven. You haven't been able to repeat it. Stop. God. And it's like, well, why should we stop? Why can't we keep trying to work at it? You already have the answer. We don't have the answer. We don't. And I think that that's important. We should be like Socrates and be skeptical and question and doubt and press and go, I'm trying to reason. I'm trying to understand the world. I don't have to have it all figured out. But I can tell you this idea, this ancient mythos that you're trying to, sell me, it's not adding up for me anymore. And, that's just my take.
It's a way of justifying the model that they have already and just assuming staying there and then you're trapped. You can't no new information can come in. You just hold on to this. You have to hold on to this static understanding. It's a sad way to like, don't you want to learn? Don't you want to continue to grow and evolve? Like, shouldn't humanity do that too? Like,
I think so. And I think the more we discover and we go down that path, we'll discover other things, other breakthroughs that we didn't have. All these religions, oddly, you would imagine, like disease and famine and plague and all this stuff that's killed off so many of us, or even the problems with war. You would think like the true religion would have solved this somehow. Instead, humans are plagued with having to be violent, plagued with all of these issues we see in the animal kingdom. And we yet behave like animals on a grand scale. And I think to myself, what's more plausible? Divine agency somehow behind all of this, or the natural world? And so, I don't want to leave it like that. And then, oh, that's ugly image you just painted. But like that means we have to do something about it. That means we need to have the meaning, the infrastructure. We have to craft the philosophy that helps gear us away from doing these particular things that we do. And clearly religion hasn't solved those problems, even though I think religion has attempted to do so in many ways, including the philosophy of Christianity. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And if you think about it, you know, if you want to stay locked in the understanding of the world from a text written compiled 2000 years ago, however long ago it would be, what about humanity continuing to learn from all our experiences and lessons that we could take from the last 2,000 years? What doesn't that bring us to a better place? Isn't there more we can learn from all the mistakes, all the tribalism, all the crusades, the witch trials, all these things? Can we learn to be more empathetic and less oppressive towards people and less violent in the name of religion? Can we learn all these things and like move to even better place? Like, I think the New Testament in some ways, the Gospels, maybe, like, I think there's progress, you know, morally from maybe the Old Testament, you know. Jesus doesn't seem like the genocidal God, at least, or maybe he'll do that later in Revelation or something.
That is kind of the point, actually. That's part of the thesis about the rebel Jesus.
The historical Jesus.
Yeah, even if you don't take my position, the consensus with like Dale Allison and Bart Ehrman is that Jesus does have, I like to use the term fetish because there's an obsession about this eschatology that God is going to come repay. And when he comes, if you're on the wrong team, you're completely screwed. It's a really horrific view that gets painted by Jesus in the Gospels for those who aren't on Team Jesus or Team God. And that, even that though, I would just say, and you've heard this before, I'm sure, at least it ends at the grave. Yahweh's done with you. Once you hit the grave, he's done playing games with you. He's done doing things to you. In the New Testament, post-Plato, probably before Plato, but you have the immortal soul from Greek philosophy that starts to incorporate its ideas into the philosophy world of the first century. And now you have these writings that talk about when you die, God's not done with you. In fact, forever and ever, depending on the model, or he has to find a way to extinguish your soul through annihilation. That's right. Punishment for a time till you're dissolved and done for.
But the people kicked out of the garden, right? Like, so they couldn't be immortal. So maybe if you don't get redeemed, you just aren't immortal. I mean, I kind of get that view. Like, anyway, it's kind of interesting. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's not all rainbows and sunshine in the New Testament either. And if there's some progress in some ways, like maybe like Jesus expanding the definition of who's my neighbor in like the Good Samaritan parable in the Gospel of Luke, like Bart Ehrman's book's talking about. That doesn't mean everything's progress. Yeah, other things could have gone backwards. But the bigger point is like we could keep growing, you know. We could grow and learn from even more lessons as humanity and move forward even more.
I think we can learn from the stories about Jesus. I think we can learn from all like various sources. I do. But also just to push back and throw this like as a thought experiment, think about it. Being good to your neighbors and going beyond the Jewish realm, right? The Good Samaritan story and others. Is that Pauline? Is that saying, well, now we're targeting the Gentile world? Because in Matthew, Jesus is talking about only going to the sheep of Israel, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Do not go to the Gentiles. Do not go to the Samaritans, he says. And then he calls the Syrophoenician woman or the Canaanite woman, I can't remember which gospel, a dog. Like, it's kind of hard to know, is that Paul that's putting in the mouth of Jesus, or is it Jesus that said this? And you and me, we nerd out on this kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
I know. I think the love your enemy thing might already be there in Matthew, maybe. But like, yeah. So it's very fascinating. Yeah.
I don't know what to do with all of it.
Look, but you could take inspiration from it without even knowing where it comes from or believing it literally, right?
Right. Again, I think your point about progress is the development and seeing we need to continue, not be stuck, I think, on ancient revelatory belief. Okay. I think we need to constantly be growing and changing. And I think we will. And I think people are just going to keep renegotiating. Once we figure out something is really horrific, they're going to reinterpret the Bible in 1,000 years from now. They're going to find a way, to somehow make it still compatible and yet maybe even be willing to condemn some of the ancient text and distance their understanding about divine revelation. Or maybe by then they go, some prophets were really of God and some weren't really of God. Who knows what they do with canon and how it gets renegotiated. I mean, there's just so much stuff that you never know where we get down the road, hopefully, as we get better. Fingers crossed,
My dad considered himself a Christian, but he did not like the Apostle Paul. He thought he was like a prick. And reading him, I'm like, I can see kind of what he meant sometimes.
I agree.
Pretty nasty towards his detractors. Yeah.
Powerful. That's interesting. I was just talking to a good friend earlier on the phone who's a Christian as well, and he was saying the same thing. He's not a fan of Paul. And yet he's a devout believer in God and praise and the whole nine, like he's legit, but he's not a fan of Paul. That's interesting that you said that.
And we can have reasons to, want to be moral from a bottom up value system, right? Like of what kind of world, what kind of society do you want to live in? Like, do you want to live in one where everyone's stealing from each other or murdering each other?
No.
Did you have good reasons? Like, just enlightened self-interest to want to support basic laws and not be at war, especially in an age where people have nuclear weapons? Do you want the whole world to be nuclear apocalypse? Like, there's lots of good reasons to care about what we talk about when we talk about morality or just how people treat each other. Yeah, that don't require a top-down, like authoritarian theism. Therefore,
100%. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Subscribe to DJ. His YouTube channel has got a script about to come out. Anything final from you?
No, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully, I think we covered a lot of ground. Hopefully, there's some good stuff in here for people that they can resonate with.
I agree, and appreciate your friendship, your knowledge, your time, vulnerably sharing your story. You really went into writing. You planned, you wanted to really cover everything. You wrote down a lot of this stuff, and you might as well show everybody.
Good thing.
Yeah, you came super prepared to try and make sure you didn't leave anything out that you thought was necessary in your story. It's not every day that you share your story, and I hope more people will open up, share their stories, whether it be on MythVision, whether it's on another channel that does this kind of stuff. Get out there, speak up. Let people know they're not alone, no matter where you land, no matter what, at the end of the day, you believe. I'm a big harm reduction kind of person. I really do want to see people get away from more harmful beliefs, more harmful ideas. I don't think we're ever going to root everything out. I think we are primates. And I would say that to say we're not robots. And so that's my final thing. Last thing, I'm about to hit the end button. Anything else, brother?
I'll just echo, tell your story, reach out to Derek about sharing your story. When people have someone else put into words what they've gone through, like I've felt when I've listened to other people tell their story, it could be a powerful, powerful thing, and it can even help them learn to tell their own story too.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, never forget, we are MythVision.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.